Marriage is a graveyard of hopes, and initially this phrase did not have such a bad meaning. It seems this poem was written in honor of proclaimed love. The protagonist realizes that for her marriage is not the joy of a lifetime, but a symbol of misfortune. After all, it's an uncomfortable family life, where the relationship between husband and wife worsens every day. The guy understands that he needs to pretend to be nice, no matter how he's used. But in return, he might be disgusted by his children. The protagonist realizes that he does not plan to live in such hell, and so he enjoys the wonderful life of a loner, ignoring the sadness of his friends. The man says that it's cool to be a bachelor, but nevertheless his life belongs only to him. The guy surprised asks why she wants to marry him, and at that moment he thinks that the carefree and happy time he once had is about to evaporate. The lady turns to him and then touches his face and says that this is all because she wants to make him kneel. This girl with long black hair and white skin is known in the Empire for her cruelty. Hearing this, the guy doesn't understand what she's talking about and thinks that this is some kind of nonsense because this will never happen. One evening, a young gentleman touches a girl and asks if she will marry him. The guy doesn't understand why he had this dream again, where he saw a blonde with long hair and a striking appearance. The main character realizes that for a couple of months now, he has been having the same dream in which he constantly proposes to an unknown girl. The man realizes that even though it's just a dream, he feels like it's prophetic. Then he puts the glass of water down on the table and crying out says, "God forbid this happens." The guy wondered if this didn't contradict his principles, since it was a marriage proposal. The butler turns to Mr. Raven and asks if he's awake yet. He suggests they go. The servant wishes him good morning and asks if he slept well last night. The gentleman asks if there is anything that he needs to do to please him. Hearing this, the man smiled and claimed that nothing could be hidden from him, and then said that his father wanted to see him. Hearing this, the young gentleman was surprised, and then said to tell him that he would come as soon as he was ready. A guy comes into his father's office and then wishes him a good day and asks if he invited him. The gentleman offers him to change seats, since he has already arrived, and then suggests getting straight to the point. His father announces that he wants him to marry Princess Charlene. The boy is surprised to hear this, but his father insists that he wants Princess Charlene. The young gentleman thought that his father was joking, and thought that he chose her because Charlene was born into a ducal family of healers. This girl is responsible for healing and purifying the entire empire. On the other hand, there's the ducal family of Deer, who fight monsters and are constantly injured. The young man understands that therefore he has no doubt about the reason why his future wife was chosen. But there is just one problem, and that is, she is a girl who is known for making men cry. The protagonist understands that, although he has not met Princess Charlene personally, she is too famous a person in high society. Charlene is a very beautiful lady, but her character leaves much to be desired. A couple of months ago, her youngest son confessed his feelings to her, and she told him to disappear and get lost. The girl says that he could only become her dog, and that is why everyone thinks that she hates men. The young gentleman doesn't understand how she agreed to marry him, and oddly enough, she's called the person who makes men cry. The guy realizes he's known for making girls cry, and that's the complete opposite of being in a serious relationship. They are known to her throughout the empire because the young man understood that he would be repulsive to her and believed that instead of a friendly conversation, he would most likely be killed. The father claims that everything has already been decided, and this is an order from His Majesty, and then he says that his son cannot break off the engagement as he did before. Hearing this, the guy is surprised and asks why, and thinks that his father probably knows, as he does, that he likes open relationships with girls. The son insists he doesn't want to marry, but the master insists that this is no reason to refuse the marriage, and that if he breaks off the engagement, he will marry his sister to the Marquis of L. L was an older gentleman who was considered a pervert who wanted girls. The boy says their age difference is too big, and they're like child and parent. Then he asks if his father is so eager to please His Majesty. The Duke considers that if he does not want to sacrifice his sister, but at this time the butler enters the room and asks forgiveness for interrupting their conversation, and then announces that Princess Charlene has arrived. The master asks in surprise if she will arrive at their estate soon, and the servant explains that she is already here. The butler explains that he led her to the gazebo located in the garden, and therefore they need to greet her. At this time, the boy thought that his father planned to reveal everything from him until the very end. When the young duke came into the garden, he saw the lady and realized that she was Princess Charlene. The guy thinks that the figure that stood in front of him looked exactly like the girl from his dream. The young gentleman thought that it was surprising, because they were so similar, that he involuntarily wondered if the girl from his dream had also appeared to him. However, the young man thinks that this is impossible, because they have different hair colors, but he still thinks that it would be better with a blonde. The young master says that today they met for the first time, and then says that his name is Raven, and he is the eldest child of the Deer family. The Duke suggests sitting down and drinking a cup of tea, because he thinks that she is tired from the journey and needs to rest, and it would be better to do this in the fresh air. The guy thought that because of her look, she gave the impression of an ice lady, but he thinks that this girl is not as bad as they say, and therefore thinks that perhaps he will be able to come to an agreement with her. Raven apologizes, and then says that he would like to hear it from her in person, and then asks what she thinks about their engagement. The young lady looked at him icily and said she didn't mind. Hearing this, the guy thought it was a lie, and that made him smile, because he thought a girl who hated men was saying she wanted to get married. The Duke asks why she wants to marry him. However, the lady remained silent in response, and then stood up abruptly, walked up to him, and then touched his cheek and said that she wanted to make him kneel. Raven takes her hand and then apologizes. She says that, contrary to rumors, his reaction is quite naive, as he thinks he's like a puppy. The girl says that this makes her want to tease him even more, because she thinks it's funny. At this time, the young gentleman does not understand what is wrong with this lady, because no one has ever treated him like this before. The Duke suggests returning to their topic, and then announces that he is against their engagement. The young man says that he also thought that she, like him, was against this marriage, and wanted to be as honest with her as possible. Raven asks if she could tell him why she agreed to this marriage, and then he looks deep into her eyes. Charlene thought for a moment, and then explained that she likes him. Hearing this, the guy thought that, again, as always, and at this time, he remembers this girl with red hair who came up to him at the ball and said that she really liked him. The redhead claimed she loved him, and therefore wanted him to marry her. A man understands that true feelings hidden behind goodwill are often ugly. The lady with red hair told her friends that if she could marry Mr. Raven, she would be safe. The girl understood that he had a lot of money, that it was impossible to spend it all in a lifetime, because he was also a knight, and his unique beauty was stunning. The Marquise thinks that it would be great to make this man her man. The Duke overheard this conversation and realized that in the end, Princess Estella and the people around her do not change. The man understands that he doesn't know her intentions or why she's trying to get closer to his family, but she can't marry him, and he knows it for sure. Raven says that he is sorry because he decided not to marry the girl who loves him. The Duke says that he has nothing more to talk about with her, and therefore asks him to forgive him, since this is the end of their conversation. Walking along the road to the castle, the gentleman thinks that she was an incredible girl after all, and considers that this is great because he will never see her again. Suddenly, the young gentleman felt a pain in his chest that made him sit down. At that moment, an assistant came to him and asked how he was feeling. The Duke assures him everything is fine, and then asks how the situation is. The man explains that the first unit sent to check the restricted area reported encountering high-class monsters. Hearing this, the gentleman thought that the detachment he sent to the Forbidden Zone should have easily dealt with the destruction of the monsters. Raven realizes that no monsters have appeared since the enslavement. He then says he understands and therefore suggests leaving immediately. The girl looked after the knight and thought that he would still come to her because she needed to wait a little. In a few minutes, the gentleman and his assistant arrived at the battlefield. The monsters attacked the knights, and the assistant says that they need to hold out until the captain arrives. The Duke turns to the knights and says that they have done a great job, and then suggests that the second and third squads check to see if there are any more monsters left. Raven asks how the injured are doing. The assistant explains that there are no fatalities, but some are seriously injured. The knight insists they will be saved if they return right now. The captain orders the first aid team to head straight to the estate with the injured, as the others will be waiting there. Suddenly, the man saw the petals and became curious about why they appeared at this time. Suddenly, the main character saw the healer and asked in surprise why she was here. The lady explains that after their dialogue, she was going to return home but overheard their conversation about monsters. Charlene explains that this is why she used teleportation to see everything for herself. The girl looked at the wounded knight and said that the miasma had spread throughout his body and that she would now cleanse everything. At this point, the knight thought that everything had been cleansed, thanks to one person. Their healers are experienced users of divine power. The guy understands that she possesses such enormous divine power that she can easily change the situation in a matter of seconds. Suddenly, the Duke saw a monster near the princess, and then screaming warned her of the danger. Charlene used magic to protect herself and dispatched the monster within a minute. Meanwhile, the Duke and his knights looked at the girl in surprise. The lady says that her hobby is killing monsters, and that this is what she loves most. The knight tells the captain that this girl finished off the monsters with a slap, and then asks him if he is hallucinating and if he died. Raven looked at the lady, and he became interested in who she was, because he realized that she surprised him. Suddenly, the girl comes up to him and says that she promises to always protect him, and then touches his hand and proposes to marry her. Sitting in the carriage, the guy thought that the weather was so good, even though he was going to the place of his death. Thanks to Miss Estella's public proposal that day, his life changed completely. The knights turned to the captain and said he must marry this girl. And wherever he went, they always repeated this. The Duke understood that no matter what he did, there was greater pressure from his knights, who became her followers. The guy reflects on the fact that her divine power should only heal, so he is interested in how she was able to destroy the monsters. Divine power is a special energy that can fight monsters and miasmas, unlike magic which anyone can use. Only descendants of two great ducal families can use this power: the Deer family of knights and the Charlene family of healing. There was no one who could use both powers at once, except for one person, a saint who saved their empire long ago. The young gentleman received a letter asking if he would like to enter into a contract marriage. The knight approaches the lady and apologizes for keeping her waiting. The girl says she just arrived too, and the place has a cozy atmosphere. The man says that if she liked it, she can come again because this place sells rare tea depending on the seasons. Raven reports that this cafe also serves delicious shortbread pie, and his sister said it's very popular with girls. The guy suggests getting down to business, and the lady says that her participation in conquering demons is a mandatory condition. The girl says that their marriage will be valid until he receives the title, and she renounces his property and rights as a duchess. The Duke asks her in surprise if she's sure, then declares that these terms are too good for him. The little girl insists she's serious. At this time, the young gentleman does not understand what she is planning, because he knows that this girl is known for hating men. However, he is curious why she wanted to marry him, even though she lied to him about her love. The guy understands that she is cheating for her own purpose, and therefore believes that there is no need to lie to her feelings and say that she loves him for her own purpose. However, contract marriage does not always work, but with his strength, his knights will not be in danger. And then the master says that he understands. Raven offers to conclude the contract under these terms. The young lady says she's glad he agreed. The Duke says that according to rumors, he plays with the feelings of girls, and there is a possibility that he will take a mistress while he is married to her. The man says that this is why he cannot make her happy, and then asks if she will regret marrying such a man. Milady says that she has lost a lot, and is therefore tired of worrying so much, and then says that she will not regret marrying him. The man says that he understands that if she is satisfied with everything, then that is good, and therefore offers to sign a contract. The Duke says that he has already put his signature, and all that remains is for her to do it, and then everything will be ready. The little girl thought that he looked like a good-natured guy, but he had a special mood of not allowing anyone to cross the boundaries of what was permitted. His cold gaze, hidden behind a smile, made even her a little wary. The lady understands that if she were in the same position, she would probably do something similar, and therefore considers him a suspicious man. Charlene knows that there is a reason why she needs to be near him, because then she can continue to implement her plan. Suddenly, the guy grabs the girl by the hand and asks in surprise what she is doing. The little girl explains that she just signed the contract using magic, and he screams and asks why she did it. The Duke informs her that if she breaks her promise, she will have to pay for it. The lady says that she thought he was a cold person, but now he is angry at the person he previously hated. The young gentleman grabbed his head and insisted on what she was doing. The girl claims that nothing has changed, but he agrees with her and says that she is right. The lady reminds him that he had previously asked her if she would regret it, and then asks if he is not worried about it. Charlene touches his face and then whispers in his ear that she is sure he will fall in love with her. Hearing this, the man quickly pushed her away, but she only smiled and thought that it was funny, and then said that there were no surprises, and even more so. The maids were surprised when they heard that there would be a wedding between Mr. Raven and the princess of the Charlene family. The girl says that the room needs to be prepared by next week, and therefore they will be very busy. The maids were very happy, because finally a mistress would appear in their estate, and they became interested in whom she would choose as her personal servant. The girl says that she is not interested in this, and only wants a calm atmosphere to remain inside the mansion. The maids say that Mr. Raven has a girlfriend who is rumored to be his favorite, and they think that Princess Charlene probably doesn't know about it. At this time, a woman came to the young gentleman, and he opened the door and said that he had been waiting for her and asked if she had arrived safely. Catherine said that she was fine, and then looked at the table which was covered with papers. The Duke suggests that she wait a minute, as he will soon finish with all these documents, and therefore suggests that she wait at the other end of the room. The man says he came into his room dressed as a girl, and then asks why he has to dress like that for a routine treatment. Raven explains that it's because he was almost recognized that day. The Duke recalls that when he was lying on the bed and the magician was treating him, suddenly knights came to him to ask if their master was okay. In order that the secret of his illness would not be revealed, he laid the magician on the bed and then sat on top of him. When the knights saw the master, they thought that he was spending time with the girl. The Duke said that he was a little busy at the moment and asked them not to disturb him. At this time, the young gentleman thought that he should ask the magician to come to him for treatment, disguised as a woman. Raven thought that he needed to hide from everyone that he needed treatment, and he dragged Kate into this scam. The magician says that he needs to undress and go to bed, and then asks how he is doing. The gentleman says that it's better, and it's all thanks to his treatment, because he's no longer sick and feels good. Hearing this, Kate looked at the guy and thought about how terrible he was at lying. Then he said he'd cast a healing spell on him, and it should make him feel better. The Duke thought that even if he told him not to use divine power, he still would not listen to him. The gentleman believes that only direct descendants of the Gayor family own the seal designating them as custodians, and such people possess immense divine power incomparable to theirs. A single person is capable of destroying hundreds of monsters. The main character understands that this is why it is so troublesome, because he is the one who possesses such a seal. Even though he knows that using divine power will cause him to die, he will still continue to use it to protect his people as long as he has this power. As a result, he sacrifices himself to save the others. The mage announces that the treatment is complete, and at that moment, he thinks about how stubborn he is. Raven believes that the words he speaks contradict his actions. Henry says it's a very beautiful day, and the young gentleman claims he said that 100 times today. The man agrees with him and explains that he has been waiting for this moment for so long. The Duke turns to him and asks him to do what he always does. The man explains that in any case, an old man like him felt relieved that his boy wouldn't die alone. Raven reports that this girl is so straightforward that it challenges his common sense. The butler says he can't believe his boy praised her for being such a unique and wonderful girl. The guy surprised asks if he listened to him and where he praised her. The gentleman thinks that she is the type of girl who at the first meeting says that she wants to bring him to his knees. The Duke cannot imagine how she would behave towards the one she truly loves. At this time, the young lady is reading a book about how to make an unapproachable man fall in love with you. The book says that she should make the first move and make an unforgettable first impression on her partner. Step 2. Show him what she's capable of and surprise him. Step 3. Her mind and body are at odds, and she must have an exciting time behind closed doors. The girl thought that next time they needed to be alone in a closed room. Charlene wonders why this man is acting like a wild animal around her. She understands he'll avoid being locked in a room alone with her. The little girl wondered if tying him up would solve the problem, but she thought it was a good idea. The young lady understands that she is the one who knows about love only from romance novels. A father tells his son to meet his bride. The boy approaches the carriage, then takes the girl in his arms, says he's been waiting for her, and calls her his dear wife. The next day, the protagonist asks the butler what the reaction of those around him is to his engagement to the princess. The man explains that those who work here for a long time are happy. On the other hand, many young people were from the imperial capital, and they were very worried because they knew the rumors about the princess. The butler thinks that this is not enough to cause any harm, and then asks if it bothers him. Raven asks if there are any more evil rumors, because she knows that the same thing always happens. The guy remembers the gossip that women said that she was the flower of the empire who conquered the hearts of many men. But it seems the Duke hates his wife. The ladies say it's such a big shame, the guys. It's time to understand what the Duke feels, because it's so funny that so many men had feelings for her. Madame says that the man she fell in love with did not love her back. The man understands that there is no way to know when the princess will become the subject of rumors, and even if this is not true, it seems that the princess is not very good at communication. The young master orders that no one he considers dangerous be allowed to approach the mansion from now on. The Duke says that he will also make sure that she can spend her time without any inconvenience. When the protagonist met the girl, he called her his dear wife. He asked if she was tired after the long journey. The man claims that she first needs to get some proper rest in her room. The servants heard this and were amazed at the attention he paid to his wife. Raven says that he almost stopped breathing, and the lady says that these were her words, and therefore she thinks they need to talk. The man agrees with her and says that first he cast a soundproofing spell, and so now they can begin their conversations. The lady looked at him and asked if he was serious, and then said that she thought he was standing too far away to start a conversation, and assured him that she didn't bite. The man claims that this distance suits him perfectly. The little girl doesn't think for long, and then comes closer to him and says that then she can continue their conversation. The young lady thought that he was so annoying, and the only good thing about him was his cute face. The Duke reports that it was, however, very disgusting. She asks if he plans to continue. Raven says that it irritates him when people spread false rumors about their relationship that are based on nothing but speculation, and then asks if that's really that bad for her. At this time, the girl thought that this was certainly better than the bad treatment she received, and then she asked if he was okay with it. Estella wonders if he wouldn't feel uncomfortable if rumors started to spread that he was hopelessly in love with her, even though he doubted her. The guy says it's not that he completely trusts her, and even though they have a contract, he himself made the decision to marry her, and naturally this worries him. The little girl thought that the reason why he treated her like a loved one while many people were watching them was probably to protect her from the terrible rumors. The lady understands that for him this is a normal duty, but these actions do not have any special meaning for her. However, there is only one who expects the unprecedented kindness that he will show her. Estella says that's true, and he really is a good-natured man, but then asks if he's an idiot. Raven insists the former suits him better. The girl approaches him and says that if he does this minimum, then she asks if he plans to spend the night with her. Daniel, the commander of the second squad, asks in surprise if their captain has gone crazy because he told them to go and train. Third squad leader Asher asks if he keeps hearing this because he has shit in his ears. Theo, the commander of the first squad, wonders if the two are in love. The knight says they might soon find out the answer to that question. The commander believes that some kind of magic has been cast there, as it looks very much like a soundproofing spell. Daniel says that we need to do it differently, and then opens the door to the room and asks the captain why he is hiding in the middle of the day. The knights saw that their master was with his wife, and were still standing close to each other, and thought that they had a love carrot. The commanders apologized for the disturbance, and then quickly left, closing the door behind them. The Duke, crying out, asks if they're going to leave him there. The girl asks if he wasn't the one who invited her here, and what the minimum is. Standing near the door, Asher says that if a man invites a girl to his place, he must take responsibility, and then they close the doors. In the evening, the Knights of Dust drank beer, and the usher approached the captain and said that it was rare that he sulks for so long. Theo says that when he feels ill, he eats a lot, and the master tells him not to say such things to Daniel. The second squad leader, Daniel, is a man who makes all the difference with his muscles. He said he didn't understand the point of working out if he couldn't show off his success. Theo says he understands, and then asks the captain when his baby is due. The man is surprised and claims it's an unexpected question. Theo says he'll love them equally, whether they're a boy or a girl. The captain explains that they're not in the relationship he's thinking of. Raven thought about how he didn't want to be like his parents, and when he got married, he wanted to build the happiest family in the world. The man recalls that there were times when he thought this way as a child, until he learned his fate that day. The boy read that a person who has received the seal of the keeper will live a short life as payment, but he does not understand why he needs this. The main character does not understand what is the point of being with someone who loves him, because in the near future he will die. After their ancestors founded the empire, monsters and miasmas suddenly began appearing, and the entire continent was plunged into chaos. And when everyone was in despair, the great saint and the guardian knight appeared. These two erected a protective barrier that repelled the monsters and are now protecting the people. The Charlene family, which is responsible for cleansing miasma and healing, and the Dier family, which provides protection and subjugation of monsters. Conquering monsters has always been a dangerous endeavor from the perspective of the party members. If a princess with powerful divine power had participated in the raid, it would have been much easier to deal with. When the knights saw the princess, they exclaimed that their uniform suited her. They were glad she was coming with them, as they thought it would be a wonderful journey. The captain turns to the guys and says that from now on they will kill monsters, and this is not a festival, but their subjugation. The commander says in surprise that the princess can destroy monsters with just one slap, and then asks if she can destroy monsters with him. The gentleman says that it will be difficult to heal their asses, because it requires the strength of more than 100 people. The Duke offers to explain some things to them, and then informs them that a support team will definitely come to them, and in fact they will continue to provide support as usual. And they'll continue to destroy monsters just like before. Hearing this, the commanders scream and ask how this is possible. Kate reports that the gate preparation is complete and can be moved at any time. He tells the knights to stop suffering and gather at the gate. The captain tells them to move quickly. The lady asks if it is true that it would be faster if she participated in the destruction of monsters, and then asks why she doesn't do it. The captain reminds her that she said she wanted to leave them, and as he said, it would be much more effective to unite with them and conquer the monsters. Raven turns to the knights and asks what will happen to them after they leave when they get used to such support. The girl says that this is why it would be more useful if he could cooperate with them and provide them with support. The captain says that he puts his life into her hands so that she will protect him. Daniel enthusiastically says that it was a lot of fun destroying these monsters today. The knight says that it was unexpected when the princess killed the monster, attacking the support squad with one blow, and he didn't even know that they could be finished off with bare hands. The protagonist reflects on how she paid close attention to the participants' movements and supported them accordingly. Thanks to this, the monster subjugation became better than before. The princess explains that he attacked her first, and she didn't try to stand out in any way. The knight assures that she did save the lives of their doctors, and therefore thanks her. The captain tells the lady that she must now go to the support squad and ask them to cleanse her of the corruption caused by the miasma. The guy says that's all for today, and the girl grabs him by the cloak and says that she will clean him. Raven objects and says there's no need to say it, thinking she's probably tired, but the girl assures her she'll do it. The man claims that there are others, but suddenly realizes that he can't get out of it and agrees. The gentleman gives the girl his hand, and she asks if he is joking, and then explains that when cleansing and healing, the wider the area of contact with the skin, the more effective it is. The lady says that if he understood everything, then he should take off his clothes immediately. For a few minutes, the guy sat there without a piece of paper in his hands, and the lady said that he was fine, but his magical mana was a little stagnant, and maybe he wasn't getting enough sleep. The princess claims that he needs more rest and touches his body again. At this time, the little girl thought that before she felt a little discomfort when she was with him. The lady understood that many girls were in love with the captain, and even neighboring countries knew about it. They dreamed of being in his arms at least once, and there were rumors about him, both good and bad. Raven was also called a terrible person who did not respect the girls he dated, but no matter how bad the rumors were, his popularity did not subside. The princess thought that she had taken the rumors about him that were circulating in high society at face value. The girl asks if he is a virgin, and she can't believe that this is his first time. The young man suggests they calm down and talk first. She asks if he wants to talk right now. The princess began to touch his body, and he screamed, telling her to stop. Suddenly, Raven realized that the healer mage Kate was standing in front of him at that time. The gentleman explains that this is how he fell asleep, and is very glad that it was only a dream. Kate looked at her in surprise and thought that he had a nightmare, and then asked if she found out that he was a virgin. The assistant claims he's lucky this came to light now. After all, the reason he exploited the rumors about being a womanizer and enjoying playing with women was to avoid marriage. And the man claims that now that he is engaged to the princess, there is no need for this. And the Duke says that in principle he is right, and even now he is succumbing to her influence, and now knowing his secret. After all, they say that he really didn't have any experience, and that's why she made him scream loudly and made him get on his knees. Kate says that she is not going to lend him a helping hand. And even if she found out, there will be no problems. Raven says that he is very ashamed because she found out that he is a virgin and now does not understand what to do. The gentleman explains that he tried his best to be bad today, too. Kate says it's too late, and he leaves. At this time, the girl noticed that someone came out of the master's bedroom. She became curious about who this woman was. The princess realizes that 2 weeks have already passed since she moved to live in the Duke of Gyor's mansion. And thanks to Raven's plan, her life is very peaceful. Their relationship has reached the point where they call each other by their first names. The little girl thinks that she thought so, but after observing Raven's reaction, she came to the conclusion that he never really fell in love. The lady thinks the rumors are only half true. The maid combs her mistress's hair and asks if something is bothering her. The lady reports that last night she saw a woman leaving Raven's bedroom and then asks if she knows anything about it. The maid says she's sorry, but she knows nothing about it. The princess says she understands and doesn't need to apologize since she didn't tell her about her master's fidelity without permission. The mistress believes that she has something to be proud of as a servant, and she is also glad to know that she serves Raven faithfully. Hearing this, the maid thought that Mrs. Estella was not at all like the rumors she had heard. The maid believes that she truly loves Master Raven, and otherwise she would not be able to make such a kind expression. At this time, the princess thought that he did not have the same relationship with the girl she saw yesterday. However, she understands that if a rival appears, she does not want to lose, because after all, she is the one who is called the cruelest girl in the empire. The princess wondered if there was any girl better than her, and then she looked out the window at the knights who were training. The lady thinks that she should take some measures, because life in this palace is somehow monotonous. The captain tells the knights that after a break, they will resume training at the training ground. Suddenly, he saw Estella and warily asked what she was doing in this place and whether she came here to tease him. Hearing this, the girl does not understand why he is so cautious and then suggests having lunch together today. The surprised man says it's easy and asks if that's all. She insists that's not all and asks if he wants to go on a date with her tomorrow. The guy thought that when it comes to dating, everyone talks about them with pleasure, but going somewhere and having lunch together, and then there will be gossip. The gentleman believes that if he goes on a date with the princess, she will definitely do the same with him. Raven reflects on how, as soon as she found out he was a virgin, she immediately asked him out on a date and thinks she's a terrible girlfriend. And given Estella's eccentric behavior so far, his answer is certainly no. The gentleman explains that it's not that he's afraid of dating her, but he has a lot of things to do tomorrow, and that's why he's sorry, and then he leaves. Suddenly, the little girl pulled him by the shirt, and he screamed and asked if she was a gorilla, and why she was so strong, because he couldn't even take a step. The girl says that to find out if she is a gorilla, she needs to try to grab someone by the head, and maybe then she will understand, and then asks if he will be a test subject. The princess asks if he is really so busy tomorrow, and then says that if he lies, he should be careful. Hearing this, the guy got a little nervous, and then said that maybe he really is free tomorrow, and said that he doesn't mind going on a date, but they must return to the mansion before 7 in the evening, and this is his condition. Hearing this, the little girl thought that there really was a curfew at the Gyor estate, and that this was a given. Raven is thinking at this time that if they are home by 7, Estella will not attack him on a date. The little girl says that she agrees, then and then asks if they will make a promise to each other. The gentleman looked at her in surprise at what promise she was talking about and asked if she meant cutting her finger. The lady explains that this is not quite true, and when he breaks his promise, he must cut it, and then they touch each other with their fingers. The princess reminds him that they made a vow, and that if he runs away, he will be in trouble, and then leaves. The man looked at his finger in surprise and did not understand what it was, but suddenly remembered that she said that when he swears, he usually cuts his finger. The girl says that when she does something like this, she asks him if even the smallest promise seems important to him. At this time, the little girl thought that this was their small promise, because she loved him so much. Raven, sitting in his office, was very puzzled, because he did not know where to go on a date. The guy is thinking that maybe they should take a boat ride on a lake that is known for its beautiful scenery. And he also thinks about whether it's worth watching the opera that's popular now, or whether they can just eat in a cafe. The gentleman says that it is very difficult, and Asher says that he has arrived, and asks if he can come in. The commander explains that the third squad has just returned from an investigation, and the results of the investigation of the restricted area, where the monsters have reappeared, showed that, as expected, a pool of miasma has appeared. The captain says that he understands this, because monsters appear once every 2 or 3 years, and they happily crawl out of a pool of miasma. The Duke says that if we leave it like this, monsters will constantly appear. And since such a phenomenon is rare, and the last time it happened was 60 years ago, a puddle of miasma is also said to be a sign of something strange to happen. The year in which this occurred was a very unfavorable one. Raven understands that immediate action is therefore necessary, and then suggests putting up a barrier and dealing with them so that the monsters do not appear again. The commander says that he agrees with him and asks if he wants to leave tomorrow. The Duke says that this needs to be dealt with as quickly as possible, but not tomorrow, but today he will go alone. Hearing this, the commander smiled and asked if he had any plans for tomorrow's. The gentleman explains that he promised Estella to go on a date with her tomorrow. Hearing this, the men were surprised, because they understood that their master had given preference to a date rather than destroying monsters. Asher apologized and then asked if he knew how to behave on a date, and said that if he was not confident in himself, he could introduce him to the management. At this time, the captain thought that Asher knew that the rumors about him being a womanizer were false, and then claimed that everything was fine. The Duke says that they should leave a puddle of miasma on him anyway, and therefore suggests that they go and rest. He reminds them not to forget to see a healer and cleanse themselves. Asher says that even though he was turned down, he will still bring him the manual because he thinks it looks interesting. Raven looked at the black hole and realized it was a pool of miasma. Since he had sealed it, the danger of monsters appearing had disappeared. The man understands that in order to completely eliminate him, he needs to ask Charlene's family for cleansing, but for now, he needs to start hunting them. The next day, the guy thought that it was true that he agreed to go on a date, but only because he thought it would be a good time. When the Duke returned, Kate met him, and he said in surprise that it would be better if he went to rest. The man with pink hair says that it is useless, because if he is trying to look healthy, then he should maintain an expression on his face that is about to disappear. Kate wonders why he decided to put so much effort into it, since he thinks he could have gone on a date another day. At this time, the gentleman thought that he was right. This time, it was a very urgent matter, so it was better to reschedule the meeting for another day. Raven explains that he didn't mean to break his promises, but when his assistant heard this, she was surprised and asked what he was talking about. The gentleman assures that he did nothing of the sort, and at this time he realizes that he too is confused, because he doesn't know why he went to such extremes to keep his promise. The next day, sitting in the carriage, the lady just looked at him. The guy doesn't understand why she's looking at him so intently, and thinks it's strange that she's sitting there silently. The gentleman hopes that she is not thinking about anything bad, but still he feels uneasy. At this time, the little girl thinks that the correct answer is Estella's favorite book, How to Make an Unapproachable Person Fall in Love with You. She recalls that the book said that the steps her mind and her body were at odds with each other, and she needed to spend an exciting time behind closed doors. The gentleman asks in surprise what she's saying, and the lady wonders if his heart doesn't flutter when he looks at her. The man says he is scared and asks what she means. The princess thought that maybe she had made a wrong move and then moved closer to him. The Duke doesn't understand what she's doing, and the girl wonders if his heartbeat is normal, or if this level of stimulation isn't enough for Raven, who's played with many girls. The little girl thinks that in this case, if they bring their faces closer, like in those romance novels, then she sits down even closer to him. The girl says that she is very sorry and asks if it hurts him, because his heart rate has increased. Raven says that when he is with her, no matter how much he has a heart, it is not enough. The young couple found themselves near the finest boutique in the South. The princess thought it was a popular store, rumors of which had even reached the imperial capital. The Duke turns to Madame and says that much time has passed. She explains that she has been waiting for him and is honored to meet her Princess Charlene. The woman says her name is Ada, and she is the owner of a designer boutique. Raven explains that he came here to give his wife a beautiful dress and also wants to choose a dress design for the banquet, and asks if she can do it. And the Viscountess claims that of course she will be only happy and will soon show her latest design collection. The workers are surprised to hear that Princess Charlene is selfish and easily loses her temper if she doesn't like something. Moreover, with the support of the Dior family, she can completely wipe off the face of the earth what she doesn't like. At this time, Ada, overhearing the conversation of the workers, thought that she too had heard rumors about the princess. The Viscountess understands that if this is true, she will have to be careful not to offend her. When Ada saw the lady and Estella, she said that she looked beautiful, and then asked the gentleman if he thought that this dress suited the princess. The man said it suited her very well, and thought she looked like a cute gorilla. Suddenly, he realized he'd said the wrong thing. The girl says that it looks like he has problems with his head if he called her a gorilla, and asks if he will become normal if she knocks on her ear. The princess says that she thinks he has the problems, not hers, and therefore suggests giving an example of his statement if he is not a coward. The Viscountess thought that in the end, rumors are just rumors, and then says that they get along so well, and thinks that it is wonderful, and then says that she will prepare another dress. Raven asks if she needs to try on another dress, and the lady says that she was just about to return. Estella says that what he said earlier is a minimal commitment, and if this is a gift meant to protect her, then she will not need it in the future. The Duke claims that this is not an obligation, but gratitude, because she saved the lives of the squad members. The man said that besides, she came from the north and might not have many dresses suitable for the climate. That's why he wanted to give her a gift. In fact, the dress Estella wore yesterday must have been too hot to wear in the south at this time of year. She could use this as an excuse to ask for a dress. The lady says she doesn't need any clothes after all, as one is enough for her. And the Duke says that if she's worried about money, the Dyer family has no such problems. Even if he bought everything in that store, it wouldn't affect them in any way. Raven explains that's why he was glad she accepted it without hesitation. She tells him not to complain later. The main character thought that when he first met her, he thought that she was an arrogant young lady. Well, now that he sees her clumsy side, he wants to know if he will get it, and therefore thinks that it looks like he really has a problem with his head. Raven asks the girl to wait a minute and asks if he can touch her hair. The lady says that she is not against it and does not understand why he suddenly wanted this. The gentleman says he saw this brooch and thought it would look great on her. He put the brooch on the girl's hair and says he was right because she looks beautiful. The Duke explains that he is talking about the hair ornament and asks if she thought he was talking about her whore. The guy says that even though he suddenly gave the compliment, he addressed it to this hairpin and then smiled. When they left the boutique, the girl realized that he ended up buying all the clothes she tried on. Raven holds her cheek and says that after her hit, it hurts, and her nose too. The little girl says that if it hurts so much, she can cast healing magic, but he refuses. The man asks her if she's tired of trying on so many dresses, and then tells her that there's a popular cafe nearby. Estella says that there is a place where she would like to go. In a few minutes, the young gentleman thought about why he was so worried when he was asked to come to the stall. Raven tells the lady she looks happy. The little one says the atmosphere is different from the north, and just watching them is so refreshing. The girl thought that ever since she found out that Rhubarb liked this place, she wanted to visit it. The princess took the gentleman by the hand and said that he had a rude reaction and asked if he really thought that she would break his hand. The man took his hand back and explained that her hands were simply cold. She said that in that case, there was no need to hold hands and would instead go ahead. The gentleman thought that she thought he was complaining, and therefore decided to move away from him. Suddenly, the man turns to the lady and asks if it is possible that she is Princess Charlene. Hearing this, the saleswoman smiled and said that she could not believe that such a beautiful person had become their duchess, and therefore was very glad to meet her. The girl says that she just saw the mistress and the master together and thinks that they look so cute. At this time, the main character thought that they probably know the rumors about her, because she is as kind-hearted as Raven. But still, this is the first time that so many people have treated her with kindness, and she doesn't even know what to answer them. The girl from the street says that the princess still hasn't answered them, and thinks that she doesn't want to talk to commoners, and then asks if that's true. At this time, Estella remembered the conversation about how the man screamed and said that she was a witch, because of whom they had a monsters. He offered to sacrifice her, so the monster could eat her. Suddenly, the girl felt someone place a hand on her shoulder, and she saw the Duke standing next to her. Raven says that he is glad that his wife is so popular, and then turns to the commoners and says that they are currently on a date and asks if they could please not keep them waiting. The man says that he did something bad, and therefore suggests that everyone disperse so as not to disturb them. The man turns to the princess and says that if she doesn't mind, then let her come to them again. The main character thought that in any case she was afraid that there would be a fight, because she was called a witch, and therefore she did not answer anything. Moreover, at that moment, it seemed that she had given up on everything, thinking that it would be pointless to say anything in response. The Duke thinks he shouldn't have left her alone, then reveals that he's known them all since childhood, and therefore should have told her in advance so she could talk to them more easily. The lady claims it's not his fault. He gives her a black cat and says it looks like her. The guy explains that he spotted it by chance and immediately bought it. He then says that there are so many other interesting things to see in this place that she won't even notice how quickly the day flies. Raven gives the girl his hand and invites her to continue their date. Later in the evening, the gentleman says they can now return. The girl, holding the kitten in her arms, reflects on how when she thinks about it now, she was drowning in its kindness. The young lady thinks it's okay if she asks him one thing, and then wonders why he's so kind to her. The main character understands that after hearing the words spoken from his lips, she did not yet know that she would regret it. The boy, surprised, asks why she's asking such a question. The little girl explains that she's simply curious why he's being so kind to her, like he was today, even if he doesn't trust her completely. Raven explains that he can't trust her because he doesn't know why she decided to marry him. He then asks if she's going to tell him the truth. Estella asks if it is mean to answer a question with a question, and asks him to answer his question. The man says that he is sorry that he did not tell her earlier, but the reason is that the knights treat her well because she cleansed them all yesterday. Kate explained to the captain that when he went to the pool of miasma, the princess purified all the members of the squad. And when the gentleman heard this, he became interested in whether she had really decided to cooperate so late. Kate said she wanted to clean him up too, so she said she'd wait for him to arrive. He persuaded her to go to bed since he couldn't tell her he had seizures. At this time, the main character thought that having watched her until now, he came to the conclusion that no matter what her intentions were, she did not feel hostility towards them. And besides, lately, he feels that he can't leave her alone, and it's very similar to catching a stray cat. The reason he finds it so easy to interact with her is because she doesn't like him and asks if that's true. Raven says he's glad there are no romantic feelings between them, because he believes that if she had liked him from the start, they would never have entered into a contract marriage. The main character announces that he has decided not to marry the girl who loves him. The little girl looked at him in surprise and asked, what if she really fell in love at that moment? He grabbed his head and said that this would not happen, and by that time, their contractual relationship would be terminated. And in the evening, when the girl came to her room, she lay down on the bed and thought that even if he said that he wanted to know the reason why she wanted to marry him, he would not believe her, even if she told him the truth. The main character reflects on the fact that this is because they were a couple in a past life, and then hugs the toy that he gave her. Estelle reflects on the fact that if she told him the truth, he would consider her crazy, and understands that now this man is more cautious than then. A year ago, at a banquet in honor of the National Day, the princess remembered her previous life on the night she first saw him. That day was no exception when she grew tired of the boring pastime. She thought it would be better to go home. Suddenly, the girl heard someone say that Mr. Raven had arrived, and she realized that he was the eldest child in the Dyer family. The main character thought that she often does such things trying to please someone so that everyone is in a good mood. But at that moment time seemed to stop when she saw this guy. The feeling of loss that had been tormenting her heart for no reason until now is now filled with longing, and she feels joy from it. The princess does not understand why he forgot all these wonderful moments, because she so wanted to meet him. That day, the main character didn't even talk to Raven. All she could do was run away. The little girl thought he was an idiot, and no matter what she'd like to meet him. But when she sees him in front of her, she gets scared. Estelle reflects that if he had such memories, he would surely hate her. After all, in reality, she wasn't even aware of it, let alone remembered it. The girl thought that it didn't matter anymore, because she was here because she had vowed to do everything for his happiness. But when she came there, she was happy just to be next to him. The lady understands that she decided to live to make amends for her guilt before him, because she is sure that this is her punishment for greed. The next day at the training ground, the captain thought about choosing a knight and a maid for Estella. But suddenly, his father comes to him and screams saying that this is too much and that he needs to go to the main gate right now. Raven asks in surprise what happened, because he doesn't understand anything. Suddenly, a child boy with blonde hair turns to him and asks if he is his father. The Duke asks if he is addressing him with this question, and the baby smiles. At this time, the commander of Theo says that a boy suddenly appeared, who called the leader father, and thinks that this is like in the novel, an illegitimate child appeared. The butler, surprised, asks when he could have had a child. The gentleman suggests leaving him alone, and then insists that it's definitely not his child. Raven thought that he was a virgin, but couldn't say it in front of the child. The gentleman asks the boy where he came from, and he asks if he will throw him out if he answers. The Duke assures that of course he won't do that. Then he suggests changing the question and asks how old he is. The kid says that he is 5 years old, but this year he will turn 6, and therefore thinks that he is already an adult. Daniel says, "What's the point?" The leader is 24, and at that time he graduated from the academy, and then this boy was born. Raven turns to the guys and suggests that they get together, and then screaming announces that in any case he is not his son. The gentleman looked at the boy and did not understand why he looked so much like him as a child, but he was sure that it could not be that he was his child. Kate explains that he went to the academy with him, and Raven studied hard enough that he graduated at the top of his class. After graduating, he immediately began participating in raids to conquer monsters. And as they all know, he was so busy that he did not have time to play like he does now. Kate says that therefore the likelihood of him being his illegitimate son is small, and then asks if they would like to show their guest the estate first. The magician turns to the boys and suggests that they stop slacking off. Sitting in his office, the captain asks how the child is doing. The butler tells him not to worry, as Daniel and Theo are sitting with him. Raven offers to discuss it. The butler informs him that the details are still being finalized, but he just checked his belongings, and that he is related to Estella, and a member of the Viscount Chebest family. The gentleman asks in surprise if she is involved in this, and the man explains that they still don't know a lot, and therefore he is not sure. Dvoretsky says it appears, however, that the Chebest family is heavily in debt, as the head of the family has become addicted to gambling. And if that's true, then there's a chance he was sent here to be sold. Children have been sold to the head of the family several times in the past, and aristocrats often adopted children as well. Although they say that they are adopted in reality, they are simply selling valuable children to rich aristocrats. The butler says that they nevertheless allowed such a boy to come here alone. The Duke reports that there is not much information at the moment, and they still don't know much. Kate says that whatever Viscount Chebest's intentions are, they will never accept them, and he knows that if something bad happens, they will have no choice but to get rid of this child. Raven says that he is so careful, and even if it will be problematic, he will not kill this child and will not allow him to do it. The gentleman approaches the magician and asks if he has forgotten the promise he made to him as a child. Kate says he apologizes for the inconvenience. The captain suggests ending this conversation on that note. After all, there's a lot they don't know right now, and it's too early to make any judgments. And then he turns to the guys and says that they can come back. When the gentleman was left alone, He thought that this guy thought that it was his fault that Kate became like this. Kate Lopez is the heir to the Count Lopez family. The Lopez family has served the Dyer family since ancient times, and they would do anything to protect their family. The Dyer family is the only one capable of dealing with the protective barrier that stretches across the entire continent. Therefore, family members often become targets, not only within the empire, but also in other countries. A family born to be loyal to the Dyer family and willing to commit assassinations and other secret missions to protect them is the Lopez family. That's why he's been training them meticulously since childhood. Kate used to be more dangerous, and the protagonist wonders if the situation has improved even a little. The gentleman understands that even now things are not so ideal, but he wants this guy to also live a normal life. At this time, the girl thought that after she changed places with the prince, her heart was beating wildly. Asher asks the lady if it's difficult to choose. She says it is the commander, then advises that if she wants to experience the fun, the one on the right is better. The man says that if she is looking for a suspenseful story, he recommends the one on the left. Estella offers to tell him more, and he smiles and says he read them a long time ago. And then he thinks about the knowledge he gained from his ex-girlfriends. The lady says that she will choose this one then, and then thanks her. Asher looked at the princess and thought that he had seen her several times at banquets, and she was like a cat curled up in a ball. The commander tells the princess that he heard about a very good way, and that is to hint to his partner about the situation. At this point, the man thought she was cute and understood why the captain was so worried. Then he said that if pressure didn't help, he should try pulling. The man says that anyone would be concerned if someone suddenly behaved so abruptly. Hearing this, the main character says it has nothing to do with her. He asks, surprised, if the princess doesn't like the leader. The girl thought that she doesn't like him, but she knows that she should say it. But she can't say it, even if it's a lie. The princess insists he's mistaken. Asher thinks he must have said something wrong, then apologizes, saying it was a very rude question. The commander says that he would like to apologize and knows a bookstore with a large selection, and then asks if she would like to go there. The boy saw Estella and ran up to her, then hugged her. She asked in surprise why he was there. The young man asks if she has forgotten that she promised to be his mother, and reminds her that she said that when she gets married, she will establish him. The princess says that everything is correct, and that is what she said. Then she turns to the master and asks him to misunderstand her, because this is an oral agreement between her and the Nari. Raven asks her to explain in more detail. The lady explains that the child is the son of Viscount Chebest's third wife, or they'll call him Nari Chebest. The girl says that Viscount Chebest is her father's younger brother, and Nari is her cousin. The princess says that regarding the verbal promise that worries them all, their relatives gather in the mansion once a year, and during this time she met this child. The girl remembers that a year ago, in Charlene's estate, a boy approached her and said that he would like Estella to become his mother. The guy asks if he can become her child. The lady says he already has a mother and asks why he wants her to be his. Nari says his real mother died when he was little. Hearing this, the girl feels a little sorry for the child and says she'll agree if he wants. Estella says that this is probably impossible now, and he asks in surprise when this will be possible. At this time, the princess thought that this was too much trouble and said that she would think about it, and then said that he would be able to adopt him when she got married. Hearing this, the gentleman says that, in any case, she claims that she has no other intentions and asks if this is true. The little girl agrees with him and explains that she did not come up with any plan. The lady thought that even before she remembered her past life, she said something irresponsible. Daniel says that, in other words, this is not the illegitimate son of their leader, and therefore means that all misunderstandings have been cleared up. Raven tells her not to joke like that, because first of all, they've never met before, but the girl insists she's seen him before. The princess asks if they can discuss this when there are just the two of them. The Duke says that they will prepare a guest room for the child so that he will soon be able to rest. In the evening, the main character decided to visit the boy, and when she entered his room, she saw that he was already sleeping on the bed. The lady thinks that he might catch a cold, and suddenly she saw a bruise on his body. The princess understands that after the death of his mother, she knew that he was not being treated very well, but she understands that this is too much. Suddenly, Nari woke up and asked in surprise what happened and what hurt her. Estella took the guy's hand and insisted it didn't hurt anywhere. He lay down on the bed and asked if she was angry with him for coming without permission. The girl asks who could possibly be angry with him and instead suggests sleeping and covers the boy with a blanket. The guy says that he is sorry that he came like this and then apologizes for disturbing her. While sitting at breakfast, the gentleman asks the boy if he is going to eat, and the child assures him that he will not eat. Suddenly, the boy's knife falls to the floor, and he becomes very scared because he doesn't understand what to do. The child recalls screaming about how he'd screwed up again and how useless he was. He thought he shouldn't screw up because he might get hit. The Duke looked at the child and offered to give him his plate, and he would cut the meat for him. The gentleman says that these cutlery are not intended for children and asks if it was difficult for him and whether he can eat something on such a large plate. Raven suggests that the boy eat more because he must grow up to be a strong captain. When Nari was training with the knights, he suddenly realized that he too could use divine power. And the lady says that he is a genius. And as expected from a relative of the Charlene family, she believes that he is a future healer. Daniel asks the captain if he wants him to join the knights, because he's sure that he is useful to them. Raven says he's still a child and asks who will take care of him. Daniel insists he's a good option, even though he appears unmarried and has 5 children. The commander asks if the captain is unhappy and asserts that he is not joking and is serious about joining. The man says that watching his little boy, he knows that Nari is very good at recognizing the facial expressions of adults. At this time, the Duke realizes that although their own son has disappeared, the Viscount's family has not yet bothered to look for him. Estella looked at the gentleman and asked if everything was okay after that, and then said that she needed to talk to him about the Naris. Raven says he's been thinking about that too. The girl apologizes for being so quick, but she has a favor to ask about Nari. The lady asks if he could allow Nari to stay here for now. The Duke says no way, because the child will be returned to the Viscount's family. The princess says that when their contract ends, she will definitely take this boy with her and leave, and if she doesn't believe it, it's in the contract. The gentleman claims that no matter how many times she asks him, his answer will not change, because he cannot protect this child, even if he is being bullied. The lady asks if he knows so much, then why? The man insists that she knows what greedy people will think and asks if that's true. Raven says that if he is a poor boy, then perhaps he will be protected, and therefore offers to interpret this. After all, if the people around him knew about this, they would have established contact with the Dior family, and perhaps now more people are trying to sell children than now. The man says that because of this, children are subjected to such terrible things as this child. The girl understands that he is right, and if she accepts Nari, then people will appear who will want to get closer to the Dior family. The princess doesn't know what terrible things will happen, or if Nari will be sent back, but then says that she understands, and at least Charlene's family can protect him. The lady asks if she can simply get his father's permission. He asks surprised why the Dyer family would go to such lengths in her situation. The guy asks if she has forgotten that they are not a real couple, and reminds her that it is just an arranged marriage. The princess agrees with him and says that she was wrong, and apologizes for the inconvenience, and then asserts that this will not happen again. The next morning, the boy tells Estella that he wants to return home. Hearing this, the girl thought that it seemed like he heard their conversation, and then said that if he didn't want to go home, then there was no need for it. The princess tells him not to worry about causing trouble for anyone. Nari says that's not true, and he's just tired of being here. He says it's because there's no Viscount or toys here, and that's why he wants to go home. The next day, Nari packed his things and thanked the main character for her help, then got into the carriage. Suddenly, the main character saw that he was sitting in the carriage and crying. And the boy said that he did not want to go home, but wanted to be here with everyone. But he would prefer that the princess did not quarrel with anyone because of him. Nari thinks that everything is fine, and he will cope, because he is a strong boy who must grow up. The butler informs the master that Nari has just left. He says it was too much trouble. The assistant asks if he regrets it. The Duke says that when he looks at Mr. Nari, he keeps remembering his boy as a child. Raven says that the boy who constantly got hurt to protect his servants. The butler turns to him and asks if it is not normal to be selfish from time to time, and then asks if he really does not want to protect Mr. Naris. The Duke says he thinks he made the right decision, and the butler asks if that was the case. The gentleman says that Henry is too old to be so sentimental about something like that. The main character thinks that, in fact, he wanted to protect this child, even if it is true, but he cannot take responsibility. He doesn't know how long he can live, and after he dies, his children will have a hard time. Therefore, he won't be able to do anything that would leave the problem unresolved. Raven understands that he will not be able to protect everyone until the end. The next day in Estella's room, the maids ask in surprise why she is packing her things in a suitcase. The lady explains that this is because she is returning to her parents' house. Hearing this, the maids are very upset. The lady suggested they not worry about her, but simply rest. Hearing this, the girls thought she was very kind. Estella says she wants to ask Mr. Lopez something and asks where she can find him. The maid explains that at this hour he's usually in his office. The protagonist reflected on how yesterday she could only silently see Nari off. She realized that the Dior family had no intention of protecting this child. However, despite the need to publicly demonstrate this fact, now that the Gaillard family has expressed its intentions, it has no choice but to act of its own free will. Lady understands that this way Raven and the others won't bear any responsibility. She believes they need to come and get him as quickly as possible. A girl came into Kate's office and said she was just a minute. He invited her to sit down. Estella thanks and assures that she will not sit down because she will leave soon. The princess says that she wants to return to her parents' house for about 2 weeks and asks if this will interfere with the plans to destroy the monsters. The man says that 2 weeks is too long and asks if she is returning home because of Mr. Neris. The lady claims that this is indeed the case, and the gentleman says he thinks it will be difficult to remove the Viscount's guardianship through formal procedures. According to imperial law, minor children are treated as if their lives belong to their parents. And it's not just that they grew up in such terrible conditions as Nari, but all because it is impossible to renounce parental rights. But this is just the law, and if the case goes to court, the Viscount will let her go, and everything will calm down. The princess says that no matter what method she has to use, she will force him to give up his parental rights. The girl understands that she doesn't know how to conduct a dialogue, but she knows how to intimidate people. Kate says that he understands her and asks her to be careful on the way home, but he thinks that it will be a waste of time. At this moment, the Duke entered the office and asked what she meant. The lady saw that he was holding a child in his arms. The girl asks why, since he was against it, and he explains that it was because the old man's words worked. The gentleman recalls a conversation with the butler. Henry said it was the first time in a long time he'd run like that. The butler says that he knows that he is only an old man, but still asks to be allowed to say this, and then reports that he saw the document. The man says that even minors with divine powers can fight without their parents' permission. Henry shows permission to join the group of his own free will and asks if it was done for Mr. Nari. The butler asks if it is true that they are now holding Mr. Nari in custody without the consent of his guardian. The man thought it wouldn't even be strange if they said they kidnapped him. However, if these documents are approved, they will be able to officially greet Mr. Nari. The Duke says that while he wishes for it, he knows it's not that simple. He understands that even if everything goes well, many nobles will be against him. Raven says that he is sure that at this moment, they will be attacked by families who are hostile towards their family. The main character says that if this happens, and for some reason he cannot be there at that moment, he will not be able to protect them all. The gentleman says that therefore, as a member of the ducal family, he cannot make such a selfish decision. The butler says that his boy has put too much on his shoulders and then takes his hand and asks if he will let him carry it with him. The gentleman says that he wants them to believe and rely on him, and then says that then he will have a hard time. Henry insists that no matter how difficult it is, he will see it through to the end. While the princess was playing with a boy, a gentleman approached them and addressed her. He suddenly realized she had ignored him. At this time, the commanders were fighting among themselves. Asher of Skrikovaya claims this is a coward and offers to fight him one-on-one. Daniel believes that weaklings always whine and wonders if he can get rid of him quickly. En route, they say that he is the most powerful and terrifying demon king, and the commanders claim that they will beat him up. The knight runs away and asks for help while the boy smiles. The princess says in surprise that if Nari has divine power, then even without his parents' consent, he can become her student. The girl asks what to do about His Majesty's permission. The man explains that there won't be any problems with that. Initially, he wanted to focus on raising the next generation, and in any case, this is a good idea and will be approved in the near future. The little girl understands that Raven is friends with His Majesty, so everything will be fine, and then says that she will tell Nari about it herself. The lady says that she will also talk to her father, so that their family can help them too. The Duke of Og reports that he has already asked, and then looked at the lady and said that he is sorry that he said those cruel words the other day. Estella says that she doesn't care, because she thinks the words he said were correct. The girl says that since they finished the conversation, she will go. Nari asks if he can also become a healer like Estella and the others. The princess says that's true, but he'll start practicing when he gets a little older, and until then, he'll just learn the basics. The boy says he wants to join the squad. The lady says she understands, then strokes his hair and suggests they talk to Reborn about this place next time. Estella says that the view is very beautiful, and at that time, she thought that there is even an artificial lake on the territory as expected from the Dior family. Suddenly, the girl saw the Duke, and she wondered if she should wave back. The lady reflects on the fact that Raven only wants a contractual relationship and believes that therefore it is necessary to maintain distance and moderation. At this time, the guy thought that he had a feeling as if they had become distant from each other. The princess says that from now on she will eat in her room. That evening, the Duke says the sunset is so beautiful and asks if she wants to go for a walk with him, but she insists she can manage. Raven thinks that they are not strangers and thinks that she is angry. The commander turns to the leader and asks for help. Theo says he's heard enough stories about his wife. Daniel thinks that the leader would also like to listen to them and then asks if that is so. The commander says his wife was born in winter, which is probably why she has snow-white skin, and she looks so much like a princess from a picture book. The man says that when he returned yesterday, his beloved wife gathered all his delicacies for him. Daniel reports that she is so small, but so short in stature when she goes to bed. It is so surprising. And then he goes even further. After an hour of conversation, the commander says that this is why his wife is so cold, and he tried to warm her up with his hugs. Raven wonders if she is sensitive to cold, and if his wife might have cold hands and feet. Daniel says in surprise that indeed they are cold. The next day, the Duke comes to the princess and says that he wanted to apologize properly for the matter with Nari. The girl asks if she told him that it doesn't bother her, and then wants to leave, but he grabs her hand. Raven asks why she is avoiding him then, and if she really doesn't care, then why doesn't she talk to him? The princess reports that, as she said earlier, she is not avoiding him. The man asks why she decided to eat in her room. She says she thought keeping her distance would make him feel more at ease. The girl reminds him that as he said they are not a real couple, but are only in a marriage of convenience. Raven says that he was the first to push her away, and therefore has no right to say such a thing. But after his own words that he is not a stranger, he felt a little lonely. The gentleman claims that he really didn't understand anything until she told him, and then asks how she felt when she was suddenly pushed away. The Duke says that if he somehow offended her, he would like to apologize as well as want her to feel comfortable. At this time, the lady became interested in why this man could not ignore someone else's pain. After all those words with which he pushed her away were said for the sake of the Dior family, and she knows this, and that is why she tried not to dwell on it and ignore the pain that she had been accumulating for so long. The girl understands that everything was fine, but deep down she was in pain. Raven says that she also wants to say that she is not a stranger to him, and therefore thinks that he has no right to say such a thing. The Duke touches the girl's face and says she has a sweet smile, but suddenly he takes his hand back and doesn't understand what came over him. The little girl says that she is still angry because it was painful for her to hear this addressed to her, because she also has a heart. But he is being cunning, saying that he was lonely and therefore thinks it is mean. The girl reports that she was most angry at herself for relying on him without thinking. The lady said she knew how much he cared for all members of the Dior family, and she thought about how, as always, he had placed a heavy burden on his shoulders. The princess understands that this is why she would like to protect, at least in this life, what he values, and therefore she suggests making peace because she does not like to be in a quarrel forever. Estella insists that this conversation must end. He agrees with her and takes her hand. The lady said that was enough and that he should let go of her hand. He let go of her hand and apologized. The girl looked at him and realized that he was acting strangely and asked what was bothering him. The Duke gives the girl a box and asks her to use it if she wants, of course. The little girl, surprised, asks what it is. He explains that it's a warming ointment and says it's useful for when your hands or feet are freezing. The man says that he heard that cold is bad for your health because he knows that it is because her hands are cold. The princess thanks her and then says that she will use it carefully. The next day, the Duke reflects on the fact that they made peace yesterday, but she didn't say she would come. Suddenly, the princess comes into the dining room and apologizes for being late, and then explains that she wanted to take Nari with her, but he looks so sleepy. Raven says that he will tell the servants to take the food to his room, and when he wakes up, he can have breakfast in peace. The gentleman asks about the engagement and whether it's possible to hold the event in about a month. And if there are no problems, could an invitation be sent out? The princess says everything is fine. He says that if this happens, he will leave for the imperial capital this week. The man says he's going to go shopping before he leaves, and then asks her if she'd like to go with him. The girl says that she doesn't mind and suggests going tomorrow. At this time, the woman with red hair read the letter and said that he left her to marry this evil woman. The lady says that the Dior family and Charlene are inviting her to their engagement, and then claims that she is not going to give up Prince Dior so easily. The maid tells her mistress that she remembered something good, and then reports that the princess will be coming to the imperial capital for the first time. The lady asks if she should be invited to tea. The maid says she's sure Her Highness will be charmed by their mistress's kindness. The lady says that this is really an excellent idea, and therefore asks to bring her some paper, because she will write the invitations. In the imperial capital, commoners said that the engagement invitation was sent on behalf of the Duke of Gur, and the whole city was filled with rumors about the betrothed. The daughters of aristocrats who dreamed of being in Estella's shoes were deeply saddened that their enviable match had been snatched right from under their noses. The official announcement of the Duke's engagement left them in despair. Meanwhile, at the Gayor estate, the captain says that upon arrival in the capital, they will be temporarily freed from their nightly duties and can therefore do whatever they want. The commander asks if it can be considered, in other words, that they are on vacation. The gentleman says that they are going there as an escort. Hearing this, the knights were upset, but the master said that it was not so bad. And then he says that as soon as they return home, they will have a well-deserved rest, and therefore suggests that they try their best. A few days later, the day of departure arrived, and the butler asked the master to be careful. Henry says that as soon as he finishes his business, he'll follow them. The master agrees and says he's looking forward to it. Raven asks the girl for her hand and asks if she is ready to go with him. Sitting in the carriage, the girl turns to the boy and says that he was looking forward to this trip with such impatience. Naru smiled and said that he would be able to go for a walk with everyone, and that is why he is very happy. Raven says that along the way they will make a couple of stops in some cities, and he will be able to see the local sights. The road was long and the girl was tired, and then laid her head on the man's shoulder. Late in the evening, they arrived in the imperial capital at the residence of Duke Gayor. The lady describes it as a luxurious mansion. Grandfather understands that Duke Gayor is perhaps the only one who owns such a huge plot of land in the capital of the empire. And because of his carelessness, she sometimes forgets that he is the most influential person after the members of the royal family. Suddenly, the manager approached the gentleman, and they talked about something. The Duke looked at the princess, then approached her and apologized for keeping her waiting. He said he would give her a short tour tomorrow, and the man tells her to go to her room and get some rest, as it's been a long journey, and she might be tired. Nathan will show her the way, as he's Henry's son and the estate's manager. The butler says he's very glad to meet him. Suddenly, the boy looks at the man, and then screaming says he didn't eat him. Raven explains that Nathan once served as a sailor, which is why he has such a menacing face, but in fact he is very kind, and therefore suggests not to be afraid. The manager thinks that he imagined that he wanted to eat him, and then asks for forgiveness, and says that he will not look at him anymore. Nathan says that he brought the lady to the room, and the room of the young Master Naru is next door, and a little later he will show the whole estate. The manager says that this invitation to tea was addressed to her by Lady Earl. The main character accepted the invitation and came to the tea party. She turns to the ladies and tells them not to be shy. The author suggests going back a little 2 days to be more precise. Raven, surprised, asks if she's really going to this tea party. The princess looks at him, confused by his strange reaction. The girl says that she wants to know what is going on in high society, so she needs to at least show up there for the sake of decency. Hearing this, the guy thought that she was known as the cruelest girl and understood that there was no need to worry. The Duke touches her shoulder, and the girl takes his hand and says that this is her first appearance in society. The lady assures that she will not do anything that could tarnish his reputation. The gentleman insists that's not what he's worried about. And then he thought about how he thought she didn't get along very well with people. Raven says that if she doesn't want to have anything to do with these gossips, then she doesn't have to go anywhere. The little girl assures that everything is fine, because she will cope and have a good time. When the lady came to the tea party, she realized that there was some unusual atmosphere, and frankly, she still felt uncomfortable. A lady with red hair and a red dress addresses Her Majesty and asks if everything is to her liking. The princess says everything is fine, and the woman assures her that after meeting her in person, she understood why Master Raven chose her. Hearing this, the main character thought that her behavior was beginning to go beyond the bounds of propriety, but perhaps she wanted to show that this was acceptable in their society. The Marquise says that she is a girl herself, but is simply amazed by the beauty of Madame Estella. The cinnamon-haired lady says she bets she was chosen for more than just her pretty face, and therefore suggests the ladies not to forget themselves. The Marquise says that, recently, one of her friends received a marriage proposal, but she cannot say that she has an easygoing nature, and must note that she has a domineering disposition. And perhaps the groom simply ended up under her thumb. The girl in the blue dress says he's a poor thing, and she feels sorry for him. She believes that still waters run deep, and so she'd like to stay away from him. The Marquise asks if they are really going to get married, and smiles, then asks the princess what she thinks about it. Estella said it was lovely, because she thought they had a lot in common. Hearing this, the girl asked what it meant. The princess suggests they laugh together, and asks if this young lady is a thorn in their side. But in truth, she understands them perfectly. Estella says that if she doesn't like a person, she has a desire to trample him, so that he can never look her in the eyes again and deprive him of all dignity. The princess explains that's why she enjoys such conversations and thinks they'll get along. She turns to the girls and asks if she's right. Her Majesty inquired what they would like to do with this young lady. However, the girls remained silent in response. She said that if they wanted, she would give them a few ideas. The princess says that they know very well that she is called the most cruel woman. Suddenly, the Marquise stands up and says that she is very sorry, but she is not feeling well, and therefore asks to be allowed to deviate. At the end of the tea party, the main character says that today was fun, and the hostess thanks her for taking the time to honor them with her presence, and therefore can't wait for the next meeting. Suddenly, the ladies saw that Duke Gior himself had arrived. One of the girls said that it was the first time she had seen him so close. Estella asks the guy if he's come to pick her up. He says he came specifically because he was overly worried and suggests they return home as soon as possible. The Duke turns to the ladies and asks them to excuse him, as they are already leaving. The Marquise tells her friend in the red dress that the rumors are not lying, because they say that Mr. Dyer adores the princess. Hearing this, the woman with red hair says that she will make him hers no matter what. That evening, while the main character was sitting in her room, a raven came to her. Surprised, she asked what had happened. The guy asks if she wants to go for a little walk, because he has one favorite place that no one else knows about. Hearing this, the girl thought that this is a place that only Raven knows, and she became curious about what kind of place this is. And then she agrees. The gentleman hugs her around the waist and invites her to follow him. The manager says the gentleman did a great job. Meanwhile, the guy thinks he'd like some help, as he's exhausted from all the paperwork. Nathan is informed that there will be a meteor shower today, and asks if he would like to invite Lady Estella to join him. At this time, the manager remembers his father's words that they should be alone in a pleasant atmosphere, and he should help them with this. The gentleman says it's a great idea and that he'll need to call another nurse. However, the butler objects, saying it's late, and the children should be sleeping at this hour. Raven thought about how it was tea time today, and how Estella must be very tired. He decided to go up to her and ask. The girl opened the door, and he asked if she was asleep. She assured him she wasn't asleep yet, and then asked what happened. The gentleman informs her that he heard that today she will be able to admire the shooting stars, and then asks if she is tired. And how about a short walk? Raven says he has a favorite spot that no one else knows about, and she says she agrees. The Duke says that he will use teleportation magic and therefore suggests not to let him go. After all, it is quite dangerous, and therefore begs to be extremely careful. In a few minutes, they found themselves at the appointed place, and the princess said that it was very beautiful there. The guy asks if she likes it, and then says that he also loves this place, but wants to show her another one, and therefore suggests looking at the stars together. The gentleman gives the girl his jacket, and says that even summer nights can be cool. She thanks him. The Duke asks how the tea party went, because she seemed dejected to him when they were riding in the carriage. The little girl says yes, and explains what happened. He asks, surprised, if she said she was called the cruelest woman, and then smiles. The girl explains that she does not know how to formulate her thoughts like other aristocrats. The man says that he understands, because he also doesn't like this hypocrisy and caustic phrases with subtext. The princess says that she was almost sure that he would not like her prank, and he asks in surprise why. And isn't it great? Estella explains that, first of all, these young ladies started it and that people act first and think later. The Duke says she simply put them in their place. The guy says that he really likes such strong and brave girls. The lady says that she had no idea about his interesting preferences, and then asks if he wants to be bullied. Raven asks in surprise how she came up with this, and the girl asks if she's right. The guy explains that this is a common thing in this country because his parents didn't get along either, and every time his father had an affair, his mother became a laughingstock in high society. The man explains that she did not respond to her offenders, but simply endured the insult and then poured out all her anger on him. He looked at the lady and said that in general, she is strong-willed and perhaps to some extent truly cruel. The little girl says that she gets angry when others call her cruel and then suggests not to worry because she will cope with him because she is strong and can protect herself. At this time, the man thought that she was encouraging him so much and then thanked her. The Duke says that they came, and this place is here, and then the girl looked at the sky and saw the stars falling. The little girl understands that perhaps because of the moonlight, his eyes, to which she had long been accustomed, seemed especially beautiful to her. At this time in the imperial palace, His Majesty reads a letter stating that his son did not disappoint. The issue concerns the knighting of children without parental consent. The emperor says he plans to sign this decree for the sake of the empire's bright future. His Majesty states that only hostile nobles will have objections, but understands that this is not a problem. The Duke says that if Raven decides to do something, no one can stop him, and he simply helps his son do whatever he wants. The emperor claims that he trusts his son, and if he had just talked to them, the relationship between child and parent would not have been so strained. His Majesty thinks that maybe he is right, and then suggests that his parents come in and say hello. The girl thought she was in trouble, and that if things continued like this, she would attack Raven. However, she realized that after the incident with Nari, their relationship had softened. The maids looked at their mistress and screaming asked what had happened to her because she was pale as death, and therefore they thought that they needed to immediately call Master Raywins. At this time, the main character realizes that if she falls head over heels in love with him, all her plans will collapse. 6 months ago, at Charlene's estate, the little girl thought about how, when she first remembered her past life, she didn't even want to date Raven, let alone marry him. Estella reflects on the fact that if he has no memories of his past life, then even being the same person he is still different. Even though she knew about this, she was still worried. And when she tried to understand what he was really like, she learned that guardians don't live long. The lady understood that almost all of them eventually died in the line of duty, and even those who were lucky enough to escape this fate died at the age of 40. The main character doesn't want him to sacrifice himself for someone else. This thought made her regret being with him. If a monster attacks Raven, the main character realizes that she can easily defeat him, and she wonders if he could live such a long life. Estella knows that in their empire, it's not customary for ladies to learn to ride, much less fence, and so she was never allowed to participate in monster hunts. The main character therefore looked for other ways, and around the same time, she received news that they wanted to marry her and Raven. His Majesty spoke of an engagement with the heir of the Gaior family. The gentleman says that he, of course, refused, But the little girl insists that the wedding will take place. Charlene asks in surprise if she wants to marry him, and reminds him that she said that she would rather destroy the empire than marry anyone, and asks if those were her words. Estella claims that she doesn't remember, and says that if he doesn't want the empire to lie in ruins, he must answer that she agrees. The girl was confident that the raven who valued his comrades would not refuse her help. Therefore, she didn't bother with the question of entering into a marriage contract with him. At this time, the main character thought that she still had not decided which of the plans she would adhere to later. After all, she had Plan A, and that was to win Raven's heart, and then extend the contract for an indefinite period. Plan B: show her power and stay in his squad as a healer, even in case of divorce. The lady thinks that these are simply brilliant plans, but if anyone finds out about them, she will most likely be kicked out. At this time, Raven comes into the room and says that the maid said that she felt sick and asks if she is okay and if she feels bad. The baby looked at him and realized that today he looked even tastier. The guy comes closer to her and touches her face, and then says that she hurt her forehead because it is red. Estella reflects on the fact that she can't tell him that she tried to get him out of her head this way, and then says that just a little bit. The gentleman says that he will cast a healing spell on her, and therefore suggests that she be patient for a little while. At this time, the little girl thought that there was such a tasty morsel in front of her that she just wanted to pounce on it. The girl says that if she goes crazy, it will be his fault. The guy, surprised, asks why, considering it's a terrible accusation. The main character thought that she wanted to protect this smile, and her desire remained unchanged because she wanted him to be happy in this life. The baby understands that for this reason, her feelings do not matter, and she will throw them away if necessary. Kate tells the gentleman that she saw him talking to Princess Estella during the day. The guy wondered what it was like when she injured her forehead, and the assistant asked if maybe he liked her. The protagonist thought that when Kate asked this question, he thought about how everything would have turned out if he had not been a keeper. The Guardian possesses incredible, almost divine power, and the inhabitants of the Empire revere him as a hero. However, not everything is as wonderful as it seems at first glance. In fact, maintaining the protective barrier requires sacrifice. The previous Guardians like him received the mark at about 6 years old, and all of them, without exception, died when they were around 20. This is because powerful magic was used on them, and he could not tell anyone about it. And the attacks are getting more severe with each passing year. And something similar was described in the book. Raven thought that, if that's the case, he doesn't know if he can survive another year, knowing he can't fall in love with anyone. Naru, while with the lady in the library, says that he would choose this book called The Adventures of the Saint and the Guardian Knight. The girl asks in surprise if he likes adventure novels so much, and then offers to read him this book. Suddenly, the princess saw a gentleman who asked if she had been here all this time. The lady asks if he's finished. The man explains that they just received an official letter and tells Nari that being a knight's apprentice is hard, but he'll succeed. Suddenly, the boy burst into tears, and the gentleman asked what had happened and wondered if he had really not wanted to become a knight's apprentice. Nari says that this is the first time he has said his name, and that is why he is very happy, and thanks that they call him by his name. At this time, Raven thought that perhaps he was trying to distance himself from him without even realizing it. The gentleman takes the boy in his arms and says that from now on, he will often call him by name, so he asks him to stop crying and then asks if he will forgive him. The lady smiled and said that an apology alone would not be enough, and then asked if she could fulfill his wish. The gentleman agrees and asks the child what he wants. The boy says he wants him to read him a book. Raven agrees and states that he will read to him as much as he wants. The Duke reads that instead of destroying the Demon King, the merciful saint became his friend. Thanks to this peace reigned throughout the world, and the great saint married the Guardian Knight with whom she traveled, and they lived happily ever after. Naru excitedly says that it was so exciting, and that's why he will bring another book. When they were left alone in the room, the girl said that in fact she never married him. The gentleman looked at her in surprise and asked what she said. The lady assured him it was nothing. He wondered why she looked so displeased. The little girl assures that she has no complaints because she thinks that the story is simply not very plausible, and the great saint was beautiful, intelligent, and noble. The lady says the Guardian Knight was a fool. Hearing this, the boy tells her not to tell the boy about it. After all, he thinks she's speaking as if she knew him herself. The main character recalls her past life and how he invited her on a date that evening. Then she reveals that the Great Saint and the Guardian Knight are their previous incarnations. The princess looked at him, not understanding how she could say that. The boy asked what she was saying and whether she had a fever. The girl says that perhaps she will abstain, and he asks in surprise what happened because she suddenly fell silent. Estella says that she has seen this play before and just wanted to make fun of it, and therefore suggests thinking about her proposal because it is the most popular theatrical play in the imperial capital. The lady says that starting tomorrow the theater will be showing an opera based on this story. He suggests going there with Neri next week. The princess says that she agrees, because if they have such an opportunity, then why not go there on his birthday? Because she knows that it will be very soon. Raven looked at her and apologized, then explained that he was very busy that day. The little girl said that since it was like that, there was nothing she could do because she felt sorry for him. The man asks, "How about going on the last day of the performance, since this opera will be performed for a short period of time?" The Duke says it looks like the audience will be treated to a special performance on the last day. She agrees with them and suggests doing as he says. At this time, the butler enters the room and asks for forgiveness, and then informs the master that his gift has arrived. The boy reminds that he promised to read him another book. The gentleman says there are so many boxes and asks in surprise who they are all from. Kate reads the note and says it's from his sweetheart, because that's what it says. Hearing this, the main character doesn't understand what cutie this is from and glares at the Duke. He assures her she's misunderstood and then explains that this is how His Majesty calls himself. Raven insists that Kate knows about it too, and it would be great if he told her himself. And then he thought about how this emperor did it because he wanted to disgrace him this time too. When the gentleman opened the box, he said that this was a luxurious wine, aged for 10 years, and then I invited the lady to try it with him. Estella asks him if he likes alcohol and whether he often drinks alone. He explains that he prefers drinking with company, especially with friends. Raven asks how she is. Lady explains that it's hard to say, and then remembers that she drank a lot in her past life. The girl realizes that all she's done in her life is try different types of alcoholic drinks to kill time at social events. The little girl thought that, frankly speaking, she doesn't know how much she needs to drink to get drunk. And then she took a sip and said that it was very tasty. The Duke says that he definitely likes this wine, and he is glad that she liked it too. The main character took a bottle of wine and started drinking from the neck, and the gentleman told her not to drink anymore or she would get drunk. Estella looked at his naked chest and said that it was all his fault, and that it was because he had such an amazing body, and that was why she found it hard to restrain herself. The girl says that she has been licking him for a long time, but he doesn't notice it and thinks that it seems like he does it on purpose, and then asks if that's true. The princess sat close to him and then began to touch him, but he asked her to stop because he had turned red. The man says that he has had enough, and then says that she is too careless, because this is not a game, and anyone else could have misunderstood everything, and then something irreparable would have happened. Raven asks if she realizes it. The little one says she understands, and wants to do it only with him. At this time, the guy thought that his heart was anxiously forgotten, and he thought that he should not go further, but he had never seen such an expression on the girl's face, and therefore he could not wait to get to know her better. Estella asks if he doesn't like her, and then she thinks about how there are things she still regrets, and she thinks that many people probably have regrets that will never go away. The lady remembers that in a past life, the gentleman told her that he loved her, and does not understand why she is ignoring him again, and thinks that it means she definitely likes him. The saint claimed she didn't like him. Meanwhile, the girl thought about how he'd always loved her without pretense, and sincerely confessed his feelings to her. The Duke swore that he would protect her, even if he had to sacrifice everything, and then he knelt down and asked if she would marry him. Having heard this, the girl thought that she was deathly afraid to trust people and had never been able to tell him about what was going on in her soul, and she believes that she probably paid for it. One day, the Duke said he was sorry, but he wanted to break off the engagement because he had met someone else. Hearing this, the saint wished him luck and left him. The girl understands that this is pain that cannot be forgotten, And even now, when she remembers those days, she wants to howl in despair. The man screaming turns to the saint and suggests that she finally turn on her head, because every time she was near this man, he always spoke only about her. And then he asks if she really thinks that he fell in love with another and doesn't understand why she didn't stop him. The saint asks in surprise what he means, and the gentleman explains that this knight died to protect her because a sacrifice was needed to create a barrier over the continent that repels monsters. And that's why he left the video and thinks that she must have noticed it herself because he loved her so much. The main character understands that, as that man said, she was aware, but she was never able to reciprocate his feelings, although he deserved it more than anyone else. The saint regretted all her life that she could not say a single warm word to him, and if she had been given another chance, she would have done everything differently. The guy sat on top of her and asked if she really liked him. The next morning, the protagonist couldn't believe she'd behaved that way. Even if she couldn't lie, she believed there had to be another way to avoid the consequences. The princess is thinking about whether to honestly confess everything, and therefore thinks that she needs to talk to him. The commander turns to Miss Stella and says they were looking for her. Then he says they heard she was drinking wine with the leader yesterday, so they brought a hangover cure. The lady looked at the tray and asked if this was also a portion for Raven, and wondered if it would be okay if she handed it over herself. Hearing this, Asher thought that something was wrong, and they had a fight, and then he said that she should do as she pleased, and he would order the other knights not to disturb them. The princess knocks on the door of the master's room and says that it is she, and asks if she can come in. When the girl entered the room, she said that she had something for him, and then gave him some medicine, and asked if he could forget about what happened yesterday. Raven, surprised, asks if she remembers what happened yesterday. The little girl explains that she doesn't remember anything after she got drunk. When the Duke touched the tray, he did not understand what it was, and whether she was really the woman who appeared to him in his dreams. He apologizes for the tray falling over him. The girl says everything is fine, only the bottle broke. When the man went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air, he thought that it seemed to him that she lied when she said that she didn't remember anything after she got drunk. The Duke is sure that she remembers perfectly well what happened yesterday, but he knows that he himself was not completely honest with her. And when she said that she likes him, she knows that he will have to leave if he gives in to his feelings, and this will only make her unhappy. Suddenly, the gentleman saw Naru and asked who this naughty boy was that wandered around at night. The boy apologized for coming here without permission. The gentleman insisted he didn't need to apologize as he was simply worried about him, and so next time he suggested letting him know before going anywhere. Raven asks how he got here. The boy explains that he once heard about a beautiful flower that blooms only at night. The Duke asks if he means the glowing flowers and suggests going to see them. Naru suggests that they go horseback riding together and play in the forest, and then asks him how he likes the idea if they go for a walk together, because he would be so happy. Raven tells the boy he's been meaning to ask him why he said he wanted to go home. Hearing this, he makes a sad face, and the gentleman asks if it's hard for him to talk about it. Naru reports that while he was playing, he overheard them arguing over him, which made him sad. The Duke asks if he overheard their conversation. At this time, the man thought that no matter what excuse he finds, the words that hurt the child cannot be taken back. Naru came closer to the gentleman and then hugged him and said that he thinks that he is very sad, and therefore will hug him until he feels better, because that's what his mother did. Raven apologized for making him suffer so much because of him. The boy, surprised, asked where he got that idea from, and then explained that ever since the gentleman came to see him, he's been having a great time. Naru remembered how Raven said that he was sorry for upsetting him and asked if he wanted to come back to them. The child said that there were so many books in this place that it was difficult for him to read them himself. At that moment, the man thought that the kindness this child had given him would illuminate his path like sunlight and protect him. Raven knows he'll never let his sensitive heart harden. Then she tells him he's much wiser than him and asks if she'd like to sleep in his room. The child agreed, and the gentleman took him in his arms and thought that, despite the fact that he was still very small, he never ran away from problems and therefore believed that he should follow his example and talk to Estila. The next day, the captain fought Keith and, of course, defeated him. The pink-haired boy said his master seemed sluggish and asked if he was suffering from insomnia. Raven insists that's not true at all. Kate wondered if it had anything to do with the princess. Kate thinks that he is a fool, because this is a marriage of convenience, so all they need to do is use each other. But she understands that his master is too kind for this. The guy with pink hair realizes that there is always a whole crowd of girls hanging around the Duke, and then says, as for the selection of servants for the engagement ceremony, he will take care of them, and then let him check everything. The gentleman asks if everything is all right, and he suggests he think about himself. Raven says he doesn't have to do that. Kate said that if he understood everything he could go and do the job that only he could handle. The Duke thanked his assistant and agreed. At this time, the maids were watching the guys, and one of them said that she was very happy because she was able to see Press Kate. At this point, the mage was thinking that the servants in this estate had completely gotten out of hand. However, he realized that it wouldn't hurt to fire a few first. A woman asks her darling why he doesn't love her, and then touches his neck and strangles him as. The man insists he loves her very much and pushes her away. Meanwhile, the boy says he's in pain and can't breathe. The woman says that she would like this not to happen to her, and she would like to never get married and not love that man. The child asks his mother what he should do to make her smile again. The main character woke up and realized that it was a dream, but this somehow made his soul heavy because he realized that he fell asleep at work. Raven realizes that he hasn't been sleeping well lately. Then he goes to the girl's room and asks if she is busy now. The lady opens the door and says that she is not busy, but also has something to tell him. And then he enters the room. The girl says that first she should apologize, because when he asked her if she remembers that evening, she lied to him. The little girl claims that she basically remembered everything, and that it's a shame she lied to him. He says he noticed, and then thanks her for her honesty in confessing everything. Estella says that she really likes him, but she refuses him, and if she understood correctly, then her feelings will become a burden for him. The girl explains that then she will refuse them and will not ask for his love, and then asks if he could break off the engagement. The guy heard this and thought about what if he himself falls in love with her, and by that time the contractual relationship will be terminated. The man became curious about how many times he had hurt her, and then asked her one question and wondered why she had decided to go to such lengths and extend their contract, since he was the only one who benefited from it, and did not understand why she would make such sacrifices. The lady explains that the whole point is that he fights for women's rights in the empire, and then asks what kind of life they have. If a girl marries a man of her choice and gives birth to a child, all she can do is count down the days until her death. The little girl claims that he was a staunch opponent of this order of things, because everyone knows the story that it was he who designed stationery for Viscountess Blau when she opened her store. In turn, she helped many aristocrats become independent, and she too. The young gentleman asks if this means she's unhappy with her current lifestyle. The girl says that's true, and all she wants is to use her divine power for the good of others. Estella is informed that she was not allowed to go on the expedition with everyone else, and that is why she has set her sights on him. Hearing this, the guy thought that although she had declared that she wanted to participate in the conquest of the North, no one wanted to listen to her. However, if he hadn't sensed how great her power was, he would have been against it too. The little girl claims that she wants to benefit not only him, but others as well. Raven says surprised, "It can't be," and then asks if she wants to join the Knights of the Deer family. She assures that this is true, and no matter what happens, she will be there as a healer and will be able to save someone's life, and that is why she chose him and agreed to become his wife. The lady says she needed time to persuade him before their contract ended. Raven thinks that it is useless, because if she decides to stay in their ranks after the divorce, then those around her will laugh at her, and he knows this well, and he cannot allow this because he will not be able to protect her. The Duke says he wants her to be happy, and therefore suggests abandoning the idea. The girl says she believes she made the wrong choice. Suddenly, she realized that he had lost interest in her, and that it was her own fault, and therefore she believed that it would have been better not to get married. At this time, the man thought that even if they got married, he would not be able to make her happy, and so he threw all unnecessary thoughts out of his head and decided that ending the relationship was the right choice. Raven says that he wants to find a solution that suits both of them, but he will need some time to think about it, and therefore suggests discussing this issue a little later. The commander turns to Theo and says it's a waste of time. When he sees Kate, he asks what happened. The gentleman with pink hair explains that he is thinking about whom to appoint as assistants at the engagement ceremony, and a couple of servants working in the mansion have interested him, and therefore wants the usher to study the dossier. The man with blue hair says he understands, and that means he'll have to deal with it. Then he says he understands and will take care of it personally. The knight looked at the maid and then said that he would help her, and asked if she needed to take the basket to the laundry. The maid thanked the gentleman, but he insisted that this was a man's job, and suggested that she not be shy about asking for help, and believed that it was harmful for a woman to lift heavy objects. At this point, the man thought this was just an act of kindness, and considered her silly. The usher said he would then take another basket and asked if he was coming with him. The gentleman apologizes for the inconvenience, and the commander says that, by the way, he heard that he is the most honest person here and wanted to talk to him. The knight says that he didn't know that they spoke so highly of him, and then asks why he suddenly started talking about it. Asher explains that because he has won the trust of most of the inhabitants of this estate, and he is looking for a person who can work in the main residence of the Duke of Dior. The commander says he wants to recommend him for the position of head of security. Furthermore, they both come from noble families and should help each other. The man reports that they say that there are too many commoners in the Duke's mansion, and he thinks that this is not good. The man says with delight that he has done him a great honor and thanks him for it. The knight, watching the knights playing cards, thinks that very soon he will go to the main residence and will no longer see his comrades. The worker says it's time to go back, and if you relax too much, you'll get a scolding, and there's also the threat of tobacco smoke from them. The knight says that he never thought that his lordship would turn out to be such a fool, and then explains that he is talking about a boy named Naru. The man asks if he would defend someone else's child, knowing that all of high society would turn against him. The knight believes that one look is enough to understand that this boy is the spitting image of the Duke of Győr. The knight says that he bets that this is his illegitimate child, and his bride is also good because she turns up her nose and claims that she hates men but does what is required of her. The man said that if he were the heir of the ducal family, but suddenly he saw His Majesty the Raven and fell silent. The man looked at the dessert, and the man asked if he wanted to eat it. The Duke asked if he could. The knight thought that his master was like a big child, and then asked what he wanted to talk about. The Duke reports that the conversation will be about Naru, and he received a letter from His Majesty, and he was officially accepted as a student in their squad. The gentleman explains that until now he was treated as a guest, but from now on he wants to be treated as a comrade. The knight says with delight that finally, after all, he loves children, and therefore suggests not to worry about Nari, because he is in good hands. The man says he needs to find a weapon. Meanwhile, an usher approaches them and asks if the commander is busy. The usher says they have a little talk. The commander says that Kate ordered him to conduct an investigation, and he came to report something. Raven read the report and said that he understood the problems with his younger comrades in arms, and therefore thought it would be a good idea to resolve this issue right now. The gentleman asks if he knows where they are now, and at that moment he thought that he hadn't even imagined they would be lounging in the old servants' building. The Duke is wondering if he should demolish it so that no one else can go there. And on the way, he heard a conversation that was about a boy named Naru. Raven heard everything the knight said about the boy and his bride. When the man saw his master, he became very frightened and asked to be heard. And the captain thinks that he has heard enough and asks if it seems so to him. The knight, crying out, asserts that he truly respects him very much and understands that he was very harsh in his judgments about the princess, and then asks if this is really something to be so angry about. The man, crying out, says that almost all nobles mock women. The gentleman says he doesn't like it when people slander him behind his back. Raven says that although he was born into an aristocratic family, he believes people should respect each other regardless of gender or social status. However, some are unable to make informed decisions. The Duke says that if he did not understand him, then he expresses himself differently, and then says that, first of all, she is a person like him, and therefore believes that he should not express his opinion about her so frivolously. The young gentleman suggests that he think carefully before saying anything in the future, because as he sees it, he is very hot-tempered and could accidentally cut out his tongue. When the Duke entered the hall, he saw that the maids were whispering, and then he turned to the servant and said that he wanted to tell him something. The gentleman informs that the Dior family exists to serve the good of people and those who share these ambitions, and he intends to protect everyone no matter what. Therefore, those who want to hurt his loved ones should not expect mercy. 2 days later, the main character saw the Duke and asked what had happened. The knight thought that even if he didn't say anything, she would probably find out sooner or later. The captain explains to the lady that some of the servants of their estate have too long a tongue and they have already been kicked out, and therefore she should not worry about it. Daniel insists that His Excellency will not allow anyone to harm those dear to him, and if the commander hadn't reined in these insolent fellows, he would have given them a beating himself. The captain says he's only accepting his help. Meanwhile, the girl thought that if they celebrated Raven's birthday tomorrow, some trouble might arise. The knight asks, surprised, if she wants to celebrate his birthday. The lady says yes, but the Raven said he'll be very busy that day, so she decided to give him a little surprise. Theo heard this, didn't understand what it meant, and realized she didn't know either. The commander said he thought it best not to give gifts. The girl asks if there's a reason for this. Meanwhile, the Duke comes to them and says that his birthday is also the anniversary of his mother's death, and therefore he doesn't want to celebrate it. Raven says that it is a bit awkward to celebrate him at such an age, but he appreciates her efforts. The gentleman informs her that the servants have selected the dress she will wear to the engagement. The girl leaves and says that she understands. The next day, the Duke came to the cemetery and laid flowers on his mother's grave. He recalled his childhood when he picked flowers to give to his mother. The butler tells the young master not to run too fast, or he'll fall. The boy apologizes and then explains that today is a special day. Sitting at the table, a mother tells her son that his birthday is tomorrow. He tells her that tomorrow he will be 6 years old. Mom invites him to go somewhere, since they haven't been anywhere in a while. Hearing this, the child is delighted and says he'll be happy to go. The next day, the baby thought that he brought his mother her favorite flowers, because he wanted to please her and hoped that she would be happy. When the boy opened the door, he saw something he shouldn't have seen and remembered it for the rest of his life. After all, his mother had fallen into eternal sleep. Lady Swan turns to Henry and tells him she arrived later than planned. He insists it's no big deal, as it was their first visit in a long time, and he hadn't even expected to see them again. The lady was curious about the princess. From the rumors, she imagined her to be something like this, but she hoped she wasn't that scary. Suddenly, she saw the princess and realized that this woman goddess was too good. Estella turns to the girl and says she's probably Lady Swan. The woman says she's glad to meet her and reveals she's Raven's younger sister. The princess grabbed the girl by the hand and then apologized for suddenly grabbing her and explained that she was afraid that she would fall down the stairs. Swan says she's so absent-minded and then pushes the suitcase and it opens, and a collection of illustrations of half-naked handsome men falls out. Seeing this, the girl thought she was finished. The lady picked up the book and asked if she liked it. At this time, the girl blushed and assured that this was not the case at all, and the lady said that she had a second part. Swan says she'd like to hear about her date during the meteor shower. At this point, the main character realizes this lady loves romantic stories. The Duke's sister says there's no story that has ever delighted her so much. And the princess says hundreds of stars were reflected in the lake's surface, and it was a truly magical sight. The butler says that the lake they visited is a favorite place that only the Duke knows about. Swan says that when she was little, she constantly begged Raven to show her this place, but he never fulfilled her wish, which is why she was so surprised. The girl believes that this place must have been so important to her brother that he didn't want to tell anyone about it, and the fact that he revealed his secret to Stella. The lady says she was worried but now feels relieved. The princess, surprised, asks why she was worried. Swan reports that it's an unpleasant story, but since her parents didn't get along very well, her brother thinks that romantic relationships and marriage inevitably make partners unhappy. And when the main character heard this, she remembered the gentleman's words about how he decided to marry a girl who doesn't love him and that he's happy with everything, and therefore she understood why he said that. Estella understands that he didn't say these words to push her away, but the girl wonders if there might be something wrong with her brother. The man apologizes for interrupting their conversation and then announces that Mr. Gior has returned. Swan apologizes and asks if she can greet her brother. The lady says yes, of course, and suggests not to worry about it. At this time, the Duke thought that it took longer than he expected, and then turns to Kate and asks if he wants to say hello to Swan. However, the man only remained silent in response, and Raven asserts that he will see her for the first time in a long time and asks if he will say a few words to her. The gentleman says he's sure he can't wait to meet his little sister. Kate says that if he continues to talk nonsense, she'll bury him alive. Raven thought that this magician was such a mean guy, and he always said that, but he still continued to wear the ribbon that she gave him. When the Duke saw his sister, he said that it seemed to him that she had become shorter since their last meeting, and then asked if she was trying hard enough. The girl says she's a grown woman now, not 5 anymore. Her brother says Kate is there too, but then he looks, but the man is gone. The long-awaited day of the engagement has arrived. The Duke understands that as before, there are those who support them and those who harbor a grudge against their family, and therefore suspects that they may even have sent assassins here. The captain assigned Daniel and the others to guard the estate's outer grounds. He also warned them to be wary of the Marquis of Drane's daughter. Even if an accident occurs, the aristocrats will demand that he take full responsibility, and therefore the gentleman believes that he must be on guard. The Duke reports that they are all loyal supporters of His Majesty, which makes them their enemies, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that they have had a grudge against them for a long time. Approximately since Marquis Drane became head of the family, but it seems he no longer has any desire to hide his dislike for them. They must also keep a close eye on Count Amour's daughter. Asher reports that, come to think of it, it was she who invited Lady Estella to tea. And she has feelings for the Duke, and most likely she won't miss the chance to ruin the engagement and might want to somehow harm the princess. The Duke says that they can go on without him, because he will go later with the princess. Swan delightedly told Estella that she looked delightful, and then said that the time had come for her to call her brother. When she opened the door, she saw him. The little girl asks her brother how long he has been standing there, and then quietly asks if he wants to pay her a compliment, and how long he will just watch like that. Raven apologized, explaining that he was simply lost in thought. He then asked the princess if she was ready. He saw that the girl was wearing the brooch he had given her. Estella apologizes for keeping him waiting, and he tells her not to worry about it, and then suggests they go. The Duke wishes the guests a good evening, and thanks everyone for honoring them with their presence, and then announces that they have prepared a small concert, and therefore hope that they will enjoy it. The Count says that a lot of time has passed since their last meeting, and then asks if everything is well with him. The Marquise tells Estella that she is as beautiful as Master Raven. Then she says that Estella is very much like her father, and he probably often has trouble understanding what she's thinking, and asks if that's true. The Duke says that if you look closely, it is quite easy to read her emotions, and that he feels better next to her. The Marquise says she felt relieved, and therefore hopes that, over time, it will become even easier for them to understand each other. Raven says that he will go to greet the guests and let the princess spend more time with her family, because after all they haven't seen each other for a long time. When the girls saw the Duke, they immediately approached him and congratulated him on his engagement. He thanked them for the congratulations. The lady says that something is bothering her because her brother was also going to come, but fell ill and was very upset. The gentleman says that they rarely saw each other after graduating from the academy, and that they should definitely invite him to dinner. Swan tells the ladies that their outfits are stunning, and asks if they can tell her who made them. At that moment, the girl thought about how her brother should have trusted her, as she would lead these ladies away from him. Raven saw the tense situation of his bride, and when he came closer, he heard that the Count was annulling her engagement, and she would immediately return home. The Duke asks what happened, and says it seems they're having some kind of argument. The gentleman says it's just in time, because he wanted to ask him something. The man asks if it's true that he allowed his daughter to participate in demon subjugation. The Duke says it is. The gentleman heard this and struck Raven. The Marquise took him away and said it was too much. He insisted it was too much, because he allowed Estella to participate in such a dangerous matter, and he knew his daughter would be unhappy. The gentleman asks if he thinks he'll let her marry him. The Duke replies that perhaps he's right, as he was too frivolous, and he'll explain everything a little later, but for now he asks for forgiveness. Estella touched his face, and he took her hand and assured her everything was fine. She apologized because she was very sorry. The Duke says she has nothing to apologize for because it's all his fault. And then she thinks about how he's been thinking for a long time about what to do, but he doesn't want their relationship to end like this. The gentleman understands that he has delayed the decision for quite some time and has postponed this issue until better times in order to find an answer that will satisfy everyone. The guy understands that if he really doesn't want to make her unhappy, there's only one thing left to do. And then he turns to the girl and says that, as her father said, their marriage is unlikely to bring her happiness. Meanwhile, the ladies watching them begin to whisper that Duke Georg is not going to marry her, and that if so, one of them might claim the role of his companion, and moreover, he will not live long. The lady says that if you have patience, you can become a widow and gain wealth and power. The princess screams and says this is completely outrageous. Then she turns to the gentleman and asks if he doesn't get angry when people say such terrible things. Raven thinks it's true they're right. And at that moment, he thinks he can't tell her the truth because he won't be able to avoid death. The Duke claims that it is true that guards die early in the line of duty, and therefore knows that he is unlikely to live to old age. Hearing this, the girl thought that at moments like these, she hated herself for being born a saint, and she couldn't understand why God had chosen such a person and then granted him the power of a guardian. The main character understands that he does not deserve such a terrible fate, and she did not want him to take her place, and did not ask him to protect her. Estella says that she feels so guilty before him, and then pushes him away and just leaves silently. The girl thought that she would like him to say those same words again, and considers that her desire is selfish. The little girl understands that, without a doubt, she herself condemned him to death, and yet she never stopped thinking about whether he fought for his life until the last minute. At this time, the main character asks why he constantly gives up, and then screaming tells him not to agree to be a victim, but to fight for his survival. Raven informs him that it is the duty of the Guardian to protect the Empire and its people, and he must do so because fate decreed it so. The man claims that even knowing he will die, he won't back down, but it's his cross to bear, and he alone must bear it. He can't place such a burden on her. The little one clenched her fist and said she didn't even want to hear it. He claimed to be the Duke's heir and destined to become the Guardian. The princess approaches him and insists she wants to know what he desires. He explains that it is a barrier over the Empire, maintained by the life force of the Guardian. The man explains that this is why, as a rule, they do not live long, and unfortunately, there are no exceptions. When Raven was still a child and found out that he would soon die, he said that let it be so, because it's good that they chose him for this role and not swans. Raven thought it was wonderful, because he would be sacrificed and no one else would be harmed. But if the protective barrier disappeared, the entire country would be at risk and disaster would strike. The guy understands that he will have to come to terms with it for the common good, because he knows that having the seal of the keeper is an honor. The young gentleman reflects on the fact that this fate was prepared for him from birth, because this is his path, which he must walk with his head held high. The boy thought that in fact he was afraid of dying, and then he assured himself that everything was fine, because he had to hold on, because everyone needed a guardian, and he was obliged to protect the Empire, so everything was fine. The child understood that the truth was that he desperately wanted to live, but he understood that this wish was not destined to come true. The Duke says that even though her feelings are mutual, knowing that he could die suddenly at any moment, he then asks if she will be happy with him, and if it is worth it. The man says that a brief moment of sweetness can very soon turn into disgusting bitterness. Raven says that he doesn't want her to hurt him, and that's why they shouldn't be together. Hearing this, the girl cries out and asks if he's decided to make her unhappy now, rather than later. Then she asserts that she doesn't need his protection and doesn't intend to blame him for the outcome she's chosen. The lady says that even if he has very little time left, she wants to spend it with him because she loves him. The little girl claims that she has the right to decide how to act, and therefore asks him to listen to her words and not rush to insist on his own, because her happiness lies in being with him. Estella begs her not to leave. After these words, the guy hugs the girl and asks her not to cry. Sitting with the Duke, the young lady thought she had completely disgraced herself. After all, this was the first time she had not only burst into tears in front of another person, but also allowed her emotions to get the better of her. The princess said she wanted to erase her memory immediately. Hearing this, the Duke looked at her, then touched her face and said her eyes were red. The baby claims that all this is because he made her cry, and therefore asks him to be kind and take responsibility for it. The man hugged the girl and apologized. Then he asked her if anyone had ever blown on the wound when she was little and it hurt. He then said that it was her eyes, so it probably wouldn't help. The Duke asks how he can help her. Stella turns to him and asks to talk seriously with him, then tells him that in truth she loved him from the very beginning. The girl explains that she proposed a marriage of convenience in order to be close to him. The lady reports that she saw some literature in the mansion of Charlene's family, and when she learned that all the previous guardians died in the line of duty, she wanted to protect him because she has feelings for him. Stella says that she will stop at nothing to destroy anyone who dares to harm him, be it a monster or a person. And if God himself tries to take him away from her, she will not let him do it, even if she has to resort to extreme measures. The girl claims that she doesn't want him to hurt himself and knows that he is trying to push her away to protect her, and then takes his hand and asks him to give her a chance. At this time, the main character thought that it was now very difficult for the Raven, who always sacrificed his desires for the sake of others, to listen to his heart and act as it tells him to. The princess thought that if she were her old self, she might have stepped back for a while, not wanting to be a burden to him, thinking that it would be better that way. However, the current her can't lose him no matter the cost. So she stops being shy and then says that if she's a hindrance to him, just let him say so and she'll disappear. Estella says that they both understand that this is wrong, and she will make him say that he cannot live without her, because during the remaining time of the contract, she is seriously going to conquer him and let him be ready for this. The man thought that the mere sight of her bitter tears made his heart clench with pain, and every time he saw her beautiful eyes turn red, he was tormented by a feeling of guilt. And that's why he sincerely feels sorry for her, because even at such moments, he finds her charming. The father asks his daughter what excuse she came up with. The girl thought that even if she told everything as it was, her father wouldn't listen to her. The saint says that if Daddy considers her strong enough to participate in the subjugation of demons, the problem will be solved. And the gentleman, surprised, asks if she was joking, and asks when her strength became so great. She claims that about a year ago, and as far as she can see, there's no one on the continent who can master the divine power of purification better than her, and a person dear to her is in grave danger. Estella says that since she can protect him, she wonders if it is right to remain inactive, worrying about what others will say about it, and she does not think so. Her father says she's right, and if she has power, she can certainly use it. Hearing this, the girl thinks it's strange that she managed to persuade him so easily, but she knows there must be a catch somewhere. The lady asks if this means she has received his approval. The father says it does. The little girl says she's happy but doesn't understand why he agreed so easily. At this time, the Duke enters the room and asks him to forgive him. Then he turns to His Excellency and says that this time. But his father interrupts him and claims that there is no need to apologize because Estella told him everything. The gentleman says that first of all, he should be grateful to them, remembering the incident with Nari. And he also saw how strong his daughter is, so he no longer has any reason to object to their marriage. The father says that he must make sure that he has feelings for his daughter, and therefore offers to prove that he is not indifferent to her, and if he loves her, then at least kiss her or something. The man asks if he can do something so indecent, and asks if he can kiss the girl in front of her father, and if he doesn't love her. Hearing this, the guy became curious whether there was really no other way to show the seriousness of his intentions, and therefore he decided that he would have to gather up his courage and then kiss the girl. After the kiss, the Duke asks for forgiveness, and she hugs him and kisses him again, and then says she thinks that will be enough. The little girl turns to her daddy and asks if he's embarrassed, and then reminds him that he asked for it himself. The father, crying out in surprise, asks what his beloved daughter is doing. As he was leaving, he said the restricted area would be cleared, and her brother would come to the capital to meet her. The younger brother is Stella's twin brother, Harry Charlene. The girl asks me to tell him that she doesn't want to see him. The gentleman claims he's her younger brother, and asks her not to be so cruel to him. He then tells her that he and her mother are also planning to stay in the capital for a while, and that she can come and visit if she wants. When her father left, The little girl wondered if this meant she had received his approval. She recalled a conversation with her father and how he had responded to her question by saying that he had placed all responsibility for Nara on the Duke of Gyor's shoulders and therefore owed him. Father says that in their society, corporal punishment is considered nonviolent and a way to instill discipline in a child. In this situation, it was impossible to protect Nari without Raven's help. The man explains that he had to act quickly, but he managed to achieve his goal without wasting time on empty talk, because the aristocrats reacted violently to this. The girl thought that perhaps all this was because she had asked him to do this. Meanwhile, her father thought that it seemed he hadn't told her about the criticism he had received for his actions. Father says that instead of regretting the past, he is interested in whether it would be better to understand how Duke Gyor behaves in order to help him. The lady asks if he's referring to his demeanor. He says that's true, and while they use brute force, the Dior family is extremely reserved, preferring to destroy their enemies morally while they finish off their enemies. The main character thought about how they were the only people who could overcome the protective barrier over the continent, which is why they had enormous influence, but she realized that this was not due to the family's efforts. Raven Dyer himself has become a symbol of power. He meticulously maintains the integrity of his reputation, leading many to practically idolize him. He has many admirers, not only among aristocrats, but also among commoners. Most likely he strives so hard to ensure that his family will be respected even after his death. The gentleman says that otherwise he would have to knock him down a peg, and therefore she should support him in everything because she said that she wants to protect him, and then asks if he will change his mind when the going gets tough. Estella assures that she will never change her mind, and her father then offers to stay with him until the end, even if all of high society turns against him. However, let him not forget that even if she takes her husband's surname, the doors of her parents' home will always be open to her, and therefore he suggests not to worry about anything and just do what he considers necessary. The young lady thought about the fighting style of the Deer family, and therefore decided to protect Raven, but she realized that she needed to be braver. The butler says that it looks like the engagement went off without a hitch, and then asks when the wedding will be. Meanwhile, the Duke was thinking about how this was his first kiss. The little girl wondered how long he was going to stand there, because it was just a kiss. The guy says, screaming, that it happened too suddenly, and believes that if she found herself in a similar situation, she would behave exactly the same way. Estella suggests just kissing her right now, and upon hearing this, the guy blushed and covered his face with his palms. The butler asks the gentleman what is wrong with him, since he understands that the engagement has already taken place, and asks if he is planning to get married. Raven says that it is not so simple, and he takes wedding planning seriously, but such a sudden question surprised him. Henry claims he understands his feelings perfectly, as he wasn't himself either on the eve of his own wedding. But when he has children, someday things will be different. The gentleman imagined this situation and thought that he was embarrassed by the kiss, and that he did not understand what children were being talked about. The Duke thought that before he began organizing the celebration, he needed to write to the Emperor and inform him that the engagement had been a success. Raven says that he wants to send a letter to His Majesty and asks if he could bring the paper. The young gentleman held a book upside down in his hands and kept looking at the girl. She told him not to worry so much because she wouldn't suddenly kiss him. The lady explains that yesterday she simply had no other choice and suggests not taking it personally. He insists he's not worried at all. At this time, the guy thought that apparently he was the only one who felt awkward and said that she was used to this as he understood. When the little girl heard these words, she thought he might be jealous and asked if he meant kissing. The Duke agreed and then put the book down. Estella says that he reacts to this so funny that she wants to kiss him again and asks if it is possible to do so. At this point, the guy doesn't understand why he feels like a pervert trying to seduce an innocent girl, and the lady thinks she shouldn't rush things or she might scare him off. The princess says that she wants to ask him something, and then says that she thought that she lacked knowledge of etiquette and therefore decided to look for a teacher. Raven says he's fine with it, but wonders why she suddenly decided that way. She explains that, as far as he knows, he always says what's on his mind, regardless of the consequences. The girl feels she rarely appears in social circles and is completely inept at behaving, and she understands that if she doesn't want to jeopardize his reputation, she must learn to be smarter and more reserved. The guy looked at her in surprise and asked if she really thought it was that important. However, he believes that she is very sensitive and compassionate, who knows how to put herself in other people's shoes, and who also accepts any criticism with dignity and boldly fights back against liars and offenders. Raven says that it is true that at first, even he was afraid of her, but only because she was not like other ladies and knew how to get her way. The man says he was confused because he'd never met a girl like her before, but the more he got to know her, the more he liked her. And frankly, he admires her honesty and even looks up to her. The young man says he's sure he's not the only one. The servants used to fear her because of rumors, but now they all adore her and are proud that she has become their mistress. The Duke says that she touched their hearts so much and changed them all, and so he suggests that they not forget how wonderful she is. At this time, the gentleman thought that it would not hurt to scout out the situation and find out what they were currently talking about in high society, because he knew that in the future, this could help Estella. The guy became interested in who she should hire as a teacher, because he knows that it should be a person who understands this. Kate says that he thanks you in advance, because he was appointed as a teacher, and suggests that you don't hesitate to contact him if you have any questions. The lady asks in surprise if she should reread all these books. He insists that she understood perfectly well. Kate says there might be books there that even Raven has never opened. She says she understands. The teacher says that it will be difficult for any person to absorb such a volume of information, and asks why not start learning with something simple. The man gave the girl a book called Court Nobility. The little girl understands that he had to act quickly, but he managed to get what he wanted without wasting time on idle talk. Milady thanked him, and the man said that he would be in his office, and if she needed anything, she should call him. While Stella was learning more about the aristocrats, Raven wasn't wasting any time either. He borrowed a book from Asher called Management Relationships for Dummies. Asher said that as soon as he reads this manual, the hearts of all the ladies will belong to him, and success is guaranteed. The commander asks what is and isn't allowed during a date. Then he says that, firstly, he should be extremely attentive to his partner and compliment her, but he shouldn't call her a gorilla. Hearing this, the Duke thought about what had happened, because he had told her that she looked like a beautiful gorilla. The man says that, secondly, when a young woman asks him out on a date, he should act calm and confident. Only an inexperienced young man would be surprised if the girl took his hand. At this time, the main character thought that it seemed like he would have to rethink a lot of things, and then said that it wouldn't hurt him to take a break. Raven says that the book is certainly interesting, but it is dangerous to take everything written in it at face value, and he wonders if all the men in the world read such literature. The guy reflects on the fact that he never thought that the day would come when he would worry about this. He recalls that upon learning that he would not live long, he decided to do everything possible to ensure that those close to him did not suffer, and thought only about what would happen after his death. And that's why it's hard for him to switch now, because the feelings he feels are a real luxury for him, and he wants to touch Estella. The guy understands that he craves her attention and wants to be near her and wants to see her smile forever. Even now, he studies textbooks and can't think of anything else but her. The Duke believes that he's just not destined to enjoy this happiness for long. The gentleman asks his sister if everything is okay. The girl, surprised, asks what he's holding in his hands. Swan read the title of the book and says that now she understands it, and then offers to talk. The guy says it's a matter of fact and the topic is very delicate, and upon hearing this, she wonders if it really is her brother. The man says what he wants, and then corrects himself, and says that, to be precise, his friend wants to arrange a romantic evening for his beloved. The little girl thought that it was clear to her, and he could have not pretended that it was not about him. The man says that he behaved very rudely on the first date, and now he wants to fix everything, but doesn't understand how to do it. Raven shows him the book and asks if this textbook will help him. The girl thought that she had no idea where he got this suspicious book. Swan says that of course she agrees that books can be full of useful advice, but not this one. She knows Stella doesn't like expensive entertainment and prefers much simpler things. My sister says, for example, regular walks, and she's one of those people who appreciates the little things. And of course, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try hard, but you can't relax either. The girl says that if he prepares a surprise for her, no matter what it will be, then Estella will definitely be happy and she hopes for it. Suddenly, the guy says that he wasn't talking about himself, but she smiled and said that she understood who he was talking about. The little girl says that, to be honest, before coming here, she was worried that he decided to marry her because of her. And her brother, surprised, asks why this suddenly happened. The girl says that she knew about Henry and what his father told him, but her worries were in vain. Swan reports that she was confused when she heard about this because her father loves him, and therefore she immediately realized that it was a lie. The Duke wonders if she knew about this, because he believes that usually, if a keeper has brothers or sisters, there is no need to marry and continue the family line. In the distant past, immediately after the death of the first keeper, a terrible incident occurred, resulting in the wife and children being kidnapped by an enemy country and then killed. Moreover, such incidents recurred with alarming regularity. Therefore, the emperor had to issue a special decree to put an end to them. However, there are exceptions to every rule, and you can talk to His Majesty and get his permission for both of you to start a family if that is what he wants. However, it is not that simple. Raven explains that this is why he decided to marry Estella, and now he is very glad that he met her. The baby says that then the day will soon come when he will no longer be a virgin. The next day at His Majesty's palace, the emperor asks if he is serious when he says he is ready to go against him. The Duke says that he has visited him today to express his gratitude and is very grateful to the emperor for the kindness and generosity shown to him and his guests at the banquet. His Majesty thinks that he is not worth thanking if he is happy. Then that is enough for him, and then asks if he has anything else to tell him. Raven, surprised, asks what he means. The emperor asks if he feels guilty for not inviting him to the engagement party. The gentleman explains that it is definitely not, and if he had crossed over, we would also have to worry about his safety. The emperor came closer to the guy and then lay down on the floor and said that he was the emperor. Meanwhile, the Duke thought that he was simply unbearable when he was offended, and that he had 5 seconds left before his hysteria began. His Majesty wondered if he was going to ask for his forgiveness. The boy thought he was acting like a child. Raven says that he understands, and it is his fault, and therefore suggests that he calm down, and then asks that he not act up in front of others, because they will be disappointed. For a few minutes, the boys sat and drank wine, and the Duke asked if he was coping with his duties. The emperor assures that everything is fine, and at that time, he thought that he had dumped all the work on the Prime Minister. His Majesty turns to the guy and says that he wants to know so much from him, and then asks if he really loves Lady Charlene. The Duke says that he has a counter-question and asks why he decided to find him a bride without warning him, since he believes that he should have consulted with him. The emperor claims this is coming from someone who doesn't respect him. At this point, the young man considers that maybe he's right, and then says he knew he was against the marriage, and asks if that's true. Raven asks why Estella, because she finds it rather strange. The emperor says that, in truth, he planned to marry him to the daughter of Marquis Drain, and as he knows, Marquis Drain is extremely hostile towards him. The Duke agrees with him, because he knows that if his daughter became his wife, he would no longer be able to openly express his dislike for him. The guy understood that this would also allow for the improvement of relations between the aristocrats of the South and the court nobility, and from a purely political point of view, this would be the best option. Raven believes that in that case, there must be a good reason why he chose Stella. A year ago, at a banquet in honor of a national holiday, the emperor thought that Raven rarely attends such events, and later he will definitely remind him of this. But now he is reading what he can drink. His Majesty saw the Duke and the girl passing by. He turned to his assistant and said that Duchess Charlene had left the banquet and seemed troubled by something. He therefore believed something had happened and suggested sending a knight to escort her. Estella had any special feelings for Raven at the time. However, after some time, he learned that she was secretly following him. The gentleman understood that love had flared up in her heart, and then said that in general, he thought that if these two influential families had become related, then other aristocrats would not have dared to oppose them. The emperor says that, to be honest, he just wanted to make fun of him and asks if he wasn't a good boy. His Majesty claims that none of this matters because he has finally fallen in love with someone, and he offers to enjoy the delights of life together and then show this old man the face of his son. The man claims it's too early for that, and the gentleman claims that sometimes he feels like he's about to die. His Majesty reports that the chronicles say that all previous guardians died in the line of duty, and then asks if there is anything he doesn't know about. All the causes of death listed in the books are too abstract, and the only people who know that they are being sacrificed to maintain the protective barrier cannot read these records. The guy thought that if someone could tell the truth, he was sure they would already have tried to find a way to avoid death. But since there's no way to ask them about it, he'll have to continue searching on his own. And then, he claims he only meant to say that fighting monsters is dangerous, and therefore he should be extremely careful. The Emperor asks if he saw his younger brother Rudy on the day of the celebration. The next day, His Majesty asks why he's as fit as a fiddle, yet hasn't drunk less than him. Raven thinks it's because he's younger. The gentleman says that perhaps it's time for him to give up alcohol since he's not that old anymore. His Majesty informs him that he is impudent, and if he continues to lecture him, he will drive him away. However, now he can't cultivate the row. The Duke explains that he simply advised him to think about his health and suggests not to quibble over his words. Raven thought that if he stayed even a minute longer, the Prime Minister would quarter him, and therefore he thought it was time to call it a day. The boy says he'll be going to the temple soon. The Emperor asks when they're planning to get married and when the wedding is. His Majesty announces that this is not just a marriage, but an alliance between two great noble families. Therefore, to demonstrate your wealth and status, you need to organize a lavish celebration. Raven believes that he is not the only one who can decide what the wedding ceremony should be like, because first, he needs to discuss everything with Estella, and only then make a decision. His Majesty agrees with him because he understands that the preparations will take at least 6 months, but advises him to hurry. The captain of the Imperial Knights, Rudia, who studied with Raven at the academy, approaches the Duke. The gentleman says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and the man agrees with him, and says that the last time they met was at graduation, and then says that he has aged a lot. The Duke says he's only 2 years older than him. He says it seems they've met his brother. Raven explains that he has resolved all issues and is about to return home. Rudia says that in that case, he will walk him to the carriage. The Duke asks in surprise, since when he became a master, and why he stopped calling him senior, because he knows that they have not studied at the academy for a long time. Rudy thinks he hasn't changed and asks if everything is okay at work. He then explains that he followed his orders and didn't defer to anyone, and before he knew it, he was the squad leader. Raven smiled and said that he never said anything like that, but the man objected and claimed that he did. Rudy claims that he once told him that everything was simple because he should not agree with anyone and stick to his guns until they leave him alone. The Duke was surprised and said that he really could have blurted out something like that. Suddenly, Stella turns to Raven and he asks in surprise if she had been waiting for him all this time. The lady explains that she has just arrived and was planning to visit the palace library, but decided that it would be nice to meet him first, and then asks if he would like to join her. Rudia greets the girl and asks if she remembers him. The little girl apologizes and asks if they know each other. The Duke, surprised, asks if they know each other. Rudy explains that a year ago, during the banquet celebrating the country's founding, the princess healed his injury. The girl says that she remembered that back then, he was still an ordinary knight. Raven were once classmates. She says it was nice seeing them. The Duke informs them that it is time for them to go, and if he wants to drop in to visit them, he should not plan to leave the capital in the near future. Raven says that he needs to change clothes, and so offers to wait for him in the garden. When the lady was waiting for him, servants approached her and said that they needed to tell her something. Milady looked at them and thought that this was something important. The man kneels and begs her not to abandon them. The maid says they will follow her until the end of their days and remain faithful to her until her death. The main character looked at them and didn't understand what they were. The servants apologized for the inconvenience as they got a little carried away. Estella says that it's okay and invites them to continue. The butler says that he thinks that the lady heard that some knights allowed themselves to speak unflatteringly about her and the young master Naru, as a result of which they were expelled from the mansion. The master took advantage of this opportunity to get rid of all the gossips and slanderers at once, and many servants were left without work. The man reports that he was also fired for spreading rumors, And when he came to terms with the fact that he had not even received a letter of recommendation, a miracle happened. The maid reports that they convinced Mr. Dyer to give them another chance. The man says that Henry then contacted them. The man says that if it weren't for Mrs. Todd, he wouldn't be able to work in a decent place without a letter of recommendation. He thanks them for giving them the opportunity to improve and atone for their terrible behavior, and therefore asks to accept their sincere gratitude. At this time, the main character thought that she did not remember this at all, and was sure that it was Raven who tried and thought that something needed to be answered before they figured everything out. The lady says that she has high hopes for them, and then tells Raven that she has something to talk to him about. The Duke explains that, to tell the truth, at first he really was going to fire them, but then he thought it would be better to show mercy. The man thought that if he had simply driven out those rumors, nothing would have changed, but on the contrary, they would have started to slander with redoubled force. The gentleman believes that people would hardly dare to criticize him, but they would certainly not refuse to gossip about his fiancée. And then he says that from now on they will adore her and tell everyone around how wonderful she is, and therefore he believes that at the same time she will serve as a role model for others. Estella tells him he's extremely calculating, and he asks if that's a compliment. She thanks him for caring about her. Raven asks in surprise if he didn't tell her about this when she first visited the estate, and then he doesn't understand why, despite the fact that this is a marriage of convenience. He can't help but worry about her. The man says that because he wants his family to be the happiest in the world, and also that the girl who will become his wife will probably have a hard time, and that's why he tries. Hearing this, the little girl touched his hand and proposed to get married right now. The surprised guy says that they didn't have time to prepare anything properly, and therefore suggests that it would be better to do it tomorrow. However, the girl insisted that it was now or never. Hearing this, he thought that, judging by everything, this lady was determined. The main character wonders if he's changed his mind about marrying her. He suggests checking if the letter from the church has arrived. The butler tells the boys that the church has given its blessing to their union, and therefore he is very happy. Estella reminds him that they have to do it tomorrow and claims that she will not forgive him if he runs away. The next day, the girl asks the Duke if he is awake yet, and then says that she is coming in. There are two things that make Raven's life unbearable, and that is love and getting up early. The girl looked at the guy who was still asleep, and her mouth began to water. Then she suggested waking him up and touched him. Raven asks the lady if she can sleep for another 5 minutes, and she thought that he was a sleepyhead. And then she said that she couldn't, because she came to wake him up. The guy offers to lie down next to her and takes her hand. Before she knows it, she's in his bed. And when the Duke woke up, he asked in surprise how this could have happened. The little girl explained that he himself called her and told her to lie down next to him. She felt awkward, but she didn't argue. The man, surprised, asked if he really said that. And at this time, the girl thought that it seemed like she had gone too far, and said that almost. But he did not force her to do anything. Estella wonders if he thinks she wouldn't be able to fight back. And then he says that they are a little late. There is still time, and therefore suggests having breakfast before leaving. The gentleman says that this is a great idea because he is very hungry. A few hours later, they were standing before the church doors. At this point, the princess couldn't understand why he was so dejected, as she couldn't look at him without tears. The lady says that she would like him to stop feeling guilty because they made a mutually beneficial deal. The guy says that it's true, but a lot has changed since then, and asks if she really doesn't regret it. The little girl assures him that she is not the least bit happy to be with him, and asks if she didn't tell him about it. And then she reminds him that until their contract expires, she will not give up trying to win his heart. The gentleman assures that he remembers, and she suggests not to worry, but just gather up the courage and do it. And then she grabs him and drags him. The priest greets them and informs them that they have been expecting them. The lady apologizes for the rush and thanks them for agreeing to receive them today. At this time, Raven thought that she had dragged him here in a matter of minutes and did not understand where she got such strength from. The priest asks if they came here to receive a blessing, and the gentleman insists that this is indeed the case. The Holy Father says that he will then lead them to the prayer room. According to the laws of the empire, nobles can hold a wedding ceremony, but to do so, they must receive the blessing of the goddess Shurita. To do this, you need to take a few steps. Shurita is considered the patroness of family and home. The young couple must receive divine blessings, and after a month, the bride and groom return to the temple. After receiving a blessing during the second prayer, the couple becomes husband and wife. But there are rare exceptions, and if you manage to get the blessing the first time, you won't have to wait a whole month to get married. The priest, surprised, says, "This usually happens with soulmates or lovers from a past life." Then he adds that they say this is great luck. The Holy Father, amazed, says it's incredible to think they succeeded with just one prayer. He then asserts that they are therefore kindred spirits. Estella says that they received a blessing, which means that from today they are considered spouses, and asks if this is true. The priest says that this is true, and if they filed an application for marriage registration, then from today they are husband and wife. The girl says that it looks like from now on she will have to rely more on him, and at this time she does not understand what to do. A couple of hours later, a small party was held at the Gayor estate to celebrate the official wedding. Daniel says their commander finally got married and considers it a great joy. Asher says he's very happy because there's so much delicious food today. The Duke asks if they just want to fill their bellies and get drunk, and then looks at them angrily. The commander agrees with him and says it's Kate's idea. Raven suggests they relax and have fun today, since this is a once-in-a-lifetime holiday for him. When the gentleman went out onto the balcony, the girl asked why he was so gloomy and also wondered if he was happy about the holiday. The guy objects and says that this is not true at all, and she surprised asks what the problem is. The husband says that he did not expect that they would receive a blessing right away, and therefore did not prepare anything. The gentleman explains that he didn't have time to do anything special for her because he didn't have time to prepare. The little girl takes his hand and claims that she doesn't need this because she just wants to spend time with him, and that's all. Raven says that he still wants to treat the girl he likes more tenderly. Although Stella does not attach any importance to this, many nobles arrange weddings on the day of the second prayer. It's a ceremony during which a formal dinner is held in the presence of guests, and the guy wondered if they couldn't at least observe some traditions. Meanwhile, the little girl reflects on how she never thought Raven was so conservative, and then says he's quite romantic. The Duke thinks that all men are like this, and asks if she didn't know that. The girl thought that she had not had the opportunity to ask Raven about what he thought love should be like, and she did not understand why she should not do it now. Estella asks if he dreamed of marriage, and what he envisioned married life to be. He asks, surprised, if she's going to talk to him about love. The little girl explains that she wants to know what he thinks about it. After all, she knows that for nobles, marriage for love is something out of the realm of fantasy. It's considered normal for a man to have multiple mistresses. However, female infidelity is frowned upon by society. That's why young ladies usually wait until they become widowed or file for divorce to receive a share of their husband's fortune. They say this is the true happiness of an aristocrat's daughter. The girl wonders if it is true that women have much less freedom after marriage. He says that this is why they decided that if he ever gets married, he will cherish his wife. Raven tells me he's honestly at a loss right now, and then she thinks about how over time, he's probably come to believe that marriage makes people unhappy. The guy says that he likes holding her hand and being close to her, and he wants there to be more such pleasant moments, and probably he just wants quiet happiness. When the girl touched his hand, he remembered his father, who asked if he was really going to give up his title and leave the estate because of the saint. Father said that if he is a commoner, he will not be able to become a knight, and thinks that he is a fool, because someday he will deeply regret it. The guy claims that he will regret his decision only if he fails to protect his beloved. Raven doesn't understand what this vision is, and why Estella looks exactly like that woman. The Duke holds the girl's hands and says that he knows it's stupid, but asks to be allowed to ask her something. The guy says that lately she often touches his hands, and asks why this suddenly happens. He looked at her and saw a gorilla next to her, and then said, "Gorilla," and realized that he had screwed up. The girl asks if he'll want to do what all married couples do. He objects, claiming she's misunderstood. The man sees the Naruk and screaming begs for help and to come to him. Meanwhile, the red-haired lady asks for forgiveness, and her father tells her to shut up because he doesn't want to hear apologies. And then he looked at the newspaper, in which there was an announcement about the wedding. The butler asks the master to allow him to retire to bed. The Duke announces that they are leaving, and those who remain can continue their merriment. Raven turned to the little girl and told her he would show her to her room. She thanked him and wished him good night. The gentleman turns to the girl and reminds her that she said she doesn't want anything special, but asks to be allowed to do at least this, and then, with the help of magic, creates a bouquet, and thanks her for being with him. The Duke apologizes for having to limit himself to flowers, and then announces that he will prepare something more worthwhile a little later. The little girl said she'd be looking forward to it then. She thought how happy he would be to be married to him. The next day, the newspapers reported that the lovers from a past life, the heirs of the great ducal families representing the empire, had married. The Duke of Gaillor and Duchess Charlene were officially married, and the couple received their blessing on their first attempt. A man reading a newspaper does not understand how such a stupid and uneducated girl can be, and thinks it is outrageous that she was not stripped of her title of Duchess. The Count claims that although his daughter was present at the engagement, she failed to seduce the Raven deer, and then explains that he had no opportunity to do anything. The girl says that she is very sorry, and her father slaps her on the cheek and says that he thought that she could be useful, so he gave her an education. The man claims that even if she can no longer become his legal wife, she must get him at any cost, because this is the only way she can atone for her guilt. She looked at her dad and agreed with him. And when she went out into the hallway, she remembered that 3 years ago at a tea party for the sons and daughters of nobles who had come of age. The lady with cinnamon hair says she has pretty lace and asks if she can show her how she made the pattern. Amore looked at the princess and thought that she was a very beautiful girl, and then asked her friend if she would mind inviting her to their table. The lady thinks that it will not be easy, and the girl asks why not, because there are rumors that Duchess Charlene is not eager to make close acquaintances. The marquise says that she agrees, because they say that she has a difficult character. Amore thought that she lives in the north, but recently arrived in the capital of the empire, and probably in order to attend this event, and therefore thinks that perhaps she has no friends. The girl asks if it's not lonely to be alone all the time, and says that she will still try to invite her. Amore turns to the Duchess and asks for forgiveness for disturbing her, and then says that she is glad to meet and is the daughter of Count Amore, who runs a trading company in the capital, and her name is Grace. The lady asks if the mistress would like to join them and have tea with them and weave lace with them. Estella says it's stupid and will probably refuse. The girl looks at her in surprise, and the mistress asks if she didn't hear her say she wasn't interested in such nonsense. The princess says that she is tired of everyone telling her to act like a lady and do everything to please men, and then asks the girl if she wants her to do needlework for this purpose. Grace screams and says that this is not what she meant, and asks why she is saying such terrible things. Estella explains that it is because it irritates her, and if she continues to live like this, she will never be able to be happy. The lady says that women constantly have to live up to the expectations of others, and then asks if they are really happy with that. The princess says that they probably don't understand this, because unlike them, she will never marry and would rather die than dance to someone else's tune. Grace thought about how she knew she couldn't be happy, but she realized she had no choice but to do what she was told. The girl believes that she fooled them all, even though she insisted that she would never marry, but quickly changed her mind when the Duke came her way. The lady understands that this is why she will not be able to forgive Stella, and to think that she was able to seduce the one whom everyone admired, and she considers that this is simply unfair. While on the main street, the main character says that he wants to take part, and asks if it is possible. The man asks her to fill out her information, as her success depends on it. At this point, the lady asks the lady if she's heard the recent rumors. Angelica, surprised, asks what they're about. The girl says that this is to be expected, since she doesn't know anything, and then says that the church is of course good, but one should also be interested in secular life. Angelica smiled and asked for forgiveness. The marquise asked if it wasn't wonderful, since she was like a true saint. The woman says that Lady Angelica cannot leave anyone in trouble, but it doesn't matter whether it's a commoner or an aristocrat, and then claims that they can tell her the latest news themselves. The girl asks what the rumors are. The woman crying out says that she heard about Raven and Stella, because she heard that they went to read the first prayer the other day. The news that they had immediately managed to receive a blessing spread throughout the country overnight and became the most popular topic of discussion. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Knights training ground, a man approaches Lord Rudia and asks if he has heard that it seems Raven Dyer has received a blessing. The guy asks who would have thought that the keeper who is called the hero of the empire would marry the most cruel girl. The emperor's brother glared at the knights and said he'd go for a walk. The boy said it was the first time he'd seen him so angry. Swan thanks the princess for going with her, because she really wanted to spend time with her. The little girl says that if she's looking for a flower vase, why don't they go to an antique store? The guards dressed in casual clothes to avoid attention. The girl says that since they have already come here, she suggests they look around, because there are a lot of interesting things there. Suddenly, the main character saw a new book called The Continuation of the Legendary Novel. Swan saw the vase and asked if she liked it. The princess said she did and would go buy it. The girl thought that her brother gave her a bouquet of magical roses and thought it was very romantic, because only a few have succeeded in creating various things with magic, and he believes that it is also a unique gift. The main character looked at the girl and wondered what she was thinking about, and then he says that they bought everything they wanted and asks what they will do next. Estella says that she is probably tired from the walk and asks if she wants to go to a cafe. The little girl thinks it's a great idea and then asks if she has any favorite foods. The princess says that she likes spicy food, and Swan says that in this case she knows what will suit her taste, because an interesting event is just about to happen. The girl says that it is a competition for eating spicy food, and only the bravest gather there, and then asks if she wants to participate. The main character says she wants to participate and asks if she can. The man offers to write her name. Suddenly, the girl saw the emperor's brother, who greeted her. She asks if he's the same Raven classmate. He says she's right and reminds her that his name is Rudia. The girl asks if he's participating too. The guy says he likes spicy food. She suggests they try to have lunch. The man looked at them and said that even in this place the doves were cooing, but he believed that they would still soon lose because he would be the winner. The presenter shouts that there was a participant who won every year, and those who remain are neck and neck. However, they have two winners, and he is interested in which of them will win. The cook says he can't make food any spicier than this, and then says these guys are monsters and doesn't understand why they didn't even blush. Estella says he is a great opponent, and he claims that my lady is also good. Meanwhile, at the Gayor estate, the Duke asks why they came here and what brought them to this place. Count Akuto says that he has come to apologize to him for the blatant disrespect shown by his son. The gentleman turns to his son and asks why he is sitting like a statue, and then orders him to quickly bow his head. Raven thanks them for taking the time to visit his mansion, and then says that he doesn't need their apologies because he doesn't intend to accept them. The Duke thinks that if they were truly sorry, they should first send a letter of apology to his wife, and asks if that is right. The Count claims that he is right, but he came here despite his busy schedule, but still could not earn forgiveness, and asks if he is too strict. Akuto says that he is well aware that the blame for his son's behavior lies with him, and then asks if it is possible to show at least a drop of politeness and mercy. The Duke says that with all due respect to his dear Count, when it comes to etiquette, he should keep his mouth shut. Although he received them, they paid him a visit without any prior notice and greeted them as guests, and therefore they cannot reproach him for his lack of manners. Raven says that he would, however, like to know what they consider polite, showing up on someone's doorstep without an invitation and offering forced apologies. Hearing this, the gentleman thought that this guy was very arrogant and then asked for forgiveness. The Duke turns to the butler and offers to show the guest to the door. At this time, the man gives a coupon for very spicy dishes and says that you can eat as much of them as you want for a whole year, since this coupon is a winner's prize. Rudia took the book and read that it was a new novel called The Master Loves the False Maid. He says it's some new book and asks if it's true. The girl offers to give it to her. He apologizes, saying he shouldn't have teased them. Swan took the book and said with delight that it was a new novel and even an exclusive edition. The gentleman says that it is time for him to go, but the princess asks to wait. The lady says that her husband said that he forgot to thank him for coming to their engagement party, and so she wants to do it instead. Rudy thinks he's not worth the gratitude and asks to convey his apologies to the Duke, as he had to leave immediately. The young gentleman recalled that a girl had approached him that day and greeted him. She said she was glad to see him in good health and that she was Lady Angelica. The woman asked if he was looking for Raven. The man said yes and asked if she knew where he was. Angelica claims that she saw him just recently And perhaps he went somewhere, and maybe he is in the yard. The girl asks if it wouldn't be better to just wait until he gets back. The gentleman says he doesn't have much time and will try to find it. Angelica turns to the gentleman and asks him to wait for her, but suddenly she saw that he was already too far away and did not understand what to do, because she tried her best to hint to him. The girl understands that she cannot leave it like this because she believes that it is impossible to interfere with the lovers and ran after him. Angelica invites Mr. Rudia to return. Meanwhile, he overheard her talking about how she would try to win him over during the remainder of the contract. The lady suggests he leave, believing this conversation is private. The man agrees and says he shouldn't have come there. The emperor's brother reflects that if this is a marriage of convenience, then Duke Deer does not actually love Lady Stella. When the girls returned home, they said that today was fun. And Swan wonders why she doesn't invite her brother shopping next time. The girl believes that it is necessary to start preparing for the wedding as soon as possible, and believes that it is worth inviting an organizer because there is no time to waste. Raven turns to the ladies and announces that they will not have a wedding, and Sister asks in surprise, why? The main character explains that she doesn't like lavish celebrations and doesn't like excessive attention, and then asks if it's possible to do without it. Sitting in his office, the Duke thought that after these words, he felt ashamed for the fact that he had not thought about it at all. However, he understands that in the end, these worries are unlikely to help him live longer. After all, he only expects one divorce. In just a year this will happen, and he knows that there is not much time left, but he wants to be close to his wife, and therefore believes that something needs to be done to save their future. Raven really wanted to find a way to survive. The main character asks if they can visit the palace library after classes. Her husband suggests they go into town together and then return home. The Duke says they'll buy a lot of goodies for one. The lady asks the child what he'll study. Naru says that today is etiquette day, and Asher will teach him manners. Estella tells him that he is smart, and she is glad that he studies so hard, and then strokes his hair and suggests that he try harder. While sitting in class, the teacher looked at the student and asked if she wanted to take a break. The little girl assures her that everything is fine and thanks her for the tea. Kate considers it better to talk to her than to force her to read textbooks. The teacher asks the lady if she remembers the daughters of Marquis Drain and Count Amore, who were invited to the engagement. Estella remembered them vaguely, then said that of course she remembered. And when the man heard this, he thought she was a liar. Kate reports that it just so happens that there are two families at the head of the court nobility, and it was their names that he just mentioned. The Drain family has served the imperial family since time immemorial, and the Amore family actively supported them. In this, moreover, the current heads of both families are brothers. The girl realized that Angelica and Grace are cousins, and the teacher says that there are rumors that their daughters have been inseparable since childhood. The main character understood why the letter that Nathan gave her was sent then. The little girl remembered that she had received an invitation to a tea party from the daughter of Count Amore, although she had never been connected to their family. Estella didn't want to go, but given their close connection with the Drain family, it would have been impolite to refuse. Kate says that this is not the only reason why the Amore family has such great influence in the capital. The man reports that the Count heads the leading trading guild, which means they are very rich. The teacher says that since Count Amore often lent money to nobles at high interest rates, many of those he robbed blind harbored a grudge against him. The girl asks if this means that the Drain family has concentrated power in their hands, and Amore has money. Kate believes that in the future, she will have to see representatives of both families often, and therefore it would be good to know at least something about them. The gentleman asks if she remembers the current head of the Drain family, and then informs her that she should be wary of him. The lady thanked him for the lesson. The lady asks her friends if they remember that Duchess Charlene has a terrible temper. 1 hour later, the main character thinks that Naru's lesson will end soon, and so she decides to wait for it. Suddenly, the girl saw a knight running somewhere, and she became curious about what had happened. Asher asks the mistress what happened. She explains that she and Raven wanted to pick up Nara and take a walk around the city, then asks if they're finished. The man says Theo has escaped, and apparently the bonds are already in place. The princess asks what's happened. Asher explains that Theo comes from a normal family, so he decided it would be a good idea to teach him a few etiquette lessons. Theo believes that the basics of etiquette are as simple as pie. And although he is not an aristocrat, he knows a thing or two about manners, and besides, his deskmate is smart. The commander says he doesn't want them to be underestimated. Asher says he'll be a little stricter. Then hearing this, the main character thinks he might have gone too far. Estella looked at the child and realized that he was very tired, and said that perhaps that was enough for today. The etiquette teacher invites the princess to visit the palace rose garden, as it is now open to visitors. The man says Naru's eyes lit up when he heard this, and apparently he likes flowers. The lady says she understands. At this time, Lady Angelica and other ladies were in the garden. Grace claims that even the beauty of roses pales in comparison to Lady Angelica. Hearing this, the girl blushed and said that they were at it again, and then said that it was enough to tease her. A lady with long black hair comes closer to the girls and says that she heard that Lady Angelica is throwing a party, and then asks if she has decided who to invite. The woman insists it's impolite to ask such a question. Angelica says everything is fine and asks what she's interested in. Milady reports that she heard that she gets along well with Duke Dior, and therefore decided to find out whether she had invited him. Angelica says that she is right about this, and she was just thinking about inviting him, but he is probably busy, and besides, he recently got married and does not want to disturb him. The Marquise reports that Lady Angelique is so kind, but his wife is still a villain, and asks if this is true. Milady claims that even though they are newlyweds, their marriage can still be effective, and asks if it can be called true love in that case. The lady says that she feels sorry for her, because until recently, he had many passions, and they say that Saint Angelica was one of his fleeting infatuations. The woman claims that she never thought that the Duke of Gior would go to such a terrible woman. Angelica suggests stopping such stupid things immediately. The woman apologized, but she didn't mean to offend her. The girl objects and explains that she did not offend her, but Duchess Charlene, and then asks who gave her the right to insult the girl she met. At this time, Angelica remembered the words about how she was going to conquer him during the remaining time of the contract, and believed that she was definitely not a villain, and she would not allow anyone to talk about her with such prejudice. The Marquise says that she has such a bad character that she was called a villain, and asks if she knows about it. The lady asks if she knows her personally, because she believes that judging someone based solely on rumors is wrong, and therefore she would be ashamed. The dark-haired girl claims that she really is a saint, which is what you would expect from a person everyone loves. However, she is only pretending to be kind. The woman says that it was she who thought of Lady Angelica. At this time, the main character approaches them and says that she overheard their conversation, and therefore orders them to immediately stop throwing mud at Lady Angelica. Estella thinks she's simply jealous and asks if that's true. The stranger remains silent in response, and Estella believes she's right. The princess says that instead of trying to denigrate this young lady, it would be better if she followed her example by helping those in need through daily prayer. The main character says that it is the one who leads a righteous life and is called a saint, and then asks if she thinks it is easy. Estella says that it is easy to desire universal respect, but to earn it is not so simple, and asks if she realizes that in order to have the right to be called a saint, she needs to become one. Angelica approaches the lady and asks her to wait for her, and then thank her for protecting her. The main character insists that she did not protect her, but only repaid her kindness. The Countess asks if she would then refuse to come to her dinner party. The girl says that there will be no formality. They will just drink tea and chat. Angelica says that if the lady doesn't mind, she would be very glad to see her. The lady explains that everything depends on her schedule, and she asks if she can answer later. Angelica says that she will send her an invitation, but now asks to be allowed to decline. Naru turns to the princess and tells her with delight that there are many beautiful roses in this garden, and therefore invites her to go and see them quickly. The Duke thought that this book did not contain any details about how the protective barrier was installed. During the day, he managed to visit the library in the palace and look at secret documents, but even there he did not find anything useful. The man thought that it seemed like he needed to ask the tower for help. Raven heard someone knocking on the door, and when he opened it, he asked in surprise what she was doing at such a late hour. Estella saw that his room was in disarray and asked what happened there. The Duke explains that he was busy with some research and will clean everything up later, then claims that his room is not always so dirty. The little girl saw the notes about the saint and became curious about why he needed them. She asked what they were. The husband claims that she is too defenseless because other people can see her and then covers her with a blanket. Raven suggests that maybe the bandits will suddenly attack. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise whether he thinks anyone would dare to enter the mansion of the most powerful man in the empire. And then he assures her that she is also strong and will not lose to any guy. He says he knows this, but to be honest, he's worried and wants to protect her. The girl looked at him and said that she understood. But at that time, she thought that she was not able to argue with him because she believed that sometimes it was okay to be weak. The Duke says that since he has a mess, he will listen to her in her room, and then he goes with her. The man asks what she wanted to talk to him about. The lady explains that she accidentally ran into the Marquis Drain's daughter today while on her way to meet him. The girl tells her that she invited her to the party. Her husband, surprised, asks if they've become friends. Estella explains that circumstances did not quite work out that way, and she is thinking of accepting the invitation since this is a good opportunity to join high society. The little girl asks if he has time and if he would like to keep her company. Raven asks if she was planning on going with someone else. She says she knows he's always busy. The Duke states that he can devote as much time to her as he wishes, and then asks if she wants to tell him something. The girl says that's all, and he says he'll go back to his place. Then, the lady wishes him good night, and he kisses her on the forehead. The gentleman says that he is her husband, and if she needs anything, she should not be shy and contact him at any time of the day. When the guy left, the girl does not understand how she can sleep now, because her young body was excited. The next day, the lady asks Lady Grace's brother if Raven will be attending today's party. The Marquise asks in surprise if the villain will come too, and if so, she should have worn a nicer dress. The lady says that she agrees, and besides, she hopes that this woman, Estella, will not be selfish and will not disgrace him like last time.